All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live again. Welcome back. Today we're talking about a topic that holds no controversy whatsoever. Very mild topic.
Exciting.
And also a topic that nobody has ever even referenced anything related to this topic in the history of mankind. And of course, that would be in reference to Jesus's character. Was Jesus a good person? Wow. Very
Oh,
original. I'm going to do some sharing here first to make sure everyone knows we are live. We are in the shorts feed today. See how that goes.
can I share with my friends?
Of course, I hope you share with everybody. I'll put the YouTube link right there. Everyone who's with us already, make sure you guys have the YouTube link running on mute. That just helps us spread to more people. Spread the cult awareness, if you will, of Pangburnianism. Everyone, we are live. Was Jesus a good person? Boom.
Some of my friends
Boom.
will be Christians, some of them will be secular.
Fantastic. We love
Yeah, I got a
everyone.
diverse set of beliefs among my friends.
We have everyone here, all kinds here. So I'm also going to post the Discord link there. If you want to invite them to the Discord chat, it's right there. And the one above is the YouTube link. So invite them to both. That would be sweet. Then I got to do my internal invites here. Bug all of our Discord peeps. Scotty, there, Don, there. Niv would just be chomping at the bit for this. Let's go boom. Let's go boom. Let's go boom. Let's go boom. And we'll go. If I skip over anyone when I'm doing this, it doesn't mean I don't love you. It's just I try to limit the amount of invites I send out. And I also try to think of people in my quick list here who are theists or Christians. What's up, Mino? What's shaking? What's shaking, bacon?
Shake and bake.
All is good. All is good. Productive day so far.
Fantastic.
What's up, Barry?
Barry, Mr. Barry. I'm not going to say your last name. No, I have to. His true real born name is Barry McCockiner. Just so everyone knows.
I'll be quiet when you're explaining how this format works.
I'm going to. Yeah, I will get to that as soon as a peach, and that should make perfect sense to anyone who understands illogic. Yeah, illogic. I'm wearing my fun shirt tonight, so that means I'll be fun. Was Jesus a good person? Join the live group discussion here. I am going to click post. I'm also going to talk about every single thing I'm doing while I go about doing it. Why didn't I copy that link as well? The last thing we're going to share to the main Pangburn YouTube channel. Boom, chicka boom. Yeah. What up, everyone? Someone's saying yes already. Yes, Jesus was a good person. I'm an atheist, but you might be shocked by my answer. Oh. What's he going to say? Is he going to shit on Jesus all night? I just might. No, I won't. I probably won't. Jesus was kind of a moral well-beingist as well, but he had some issues. And we'll go through that. So basically, as always, I actually want to share this screen with you guys. There we go.
Judging him historically or by the Bible?
Oh, sorry, what's that?
Are we judging him historically or by the Bible?
I will fill you in, sir. I promise you.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Radio Talk Jock version of Trav. I'm Trav Stern tonight. Okay, here we go.
William, sorry, Trav, real quick. William, can you mute so that we don't hear any background noise from you, bud, while Trav's talking? Thanks.
Yeah, just as I am getting set up here. So tonight, I hope everyone just answers this question: was Jesus a good person, based on their own notions of good? I think it is good for our physical, mental, and social health to learn how to articulate our moral principles, the kinds of principles and metrics we would use to measure Jesus's actions. And what we know about Jesus's actions can be found in the Gospels. Now, we're not really debating the truth of whether those things actually occurred today. We're kind of doing a internal critique of Jesus, the person, as described in the Bible. And people can also, answer based on whether they believe Jesus was God or not, and then also give their moral calculus on the issue of Jesus's character. But I want to do a little bit of reading first. So for me, for those of you who've gotten to know me as a thinker over the past 10 years, I have developed myself into a moral well-beingist. Basically, what that means to me is that I have a moral quest to maximize well-being, physical, mental, and social health for myself and those around me. So think about that for 2 seconds while I remember to share my Discord link with the YouTube audience so the YouTube audience can join us. Join the live discussion here. Yes, Sedona, you can call and, better yet, join our good faith helpful conversation community by clicking that Discord link. We only require all of your credit card numbers and only 3 digits of your social insurance number. I like to guess the other 3, but you're American. I think you guys have different than Canadians, but whatever. Just, give me your credit card numbers. No, you don't have to do any of that. You can just join for free. So yes, I am a moral well-beingist. I believe that morality is ultimately born of our sentiments, and values are ultimately born of our sentiments, in that at the end of the day, when it comes to things like whether or not you think it's a good deed or a good thing to do or a righteous thing to do to help a old grandmother who has fallen down with her groceries outside the grocery store and you're the closest one to them, whether you think that's good or righteous is ultimately going to come by how you feel about that phenomena, about that experience when it happens in front of you. And most human beings with a well-functioning empathy drive within them are going to feel this necessity, this urge to want to help that grandmother up and help her with her groceries and see if she's okay. And that's a pretty universal thing across all human cultures. This particular moral instance of helping an elderly person who has fallen over, who may have hurt themselves or need help. So I think we are all, some people will call this emotivism, but I call it Humean sentimentalism. That's closer, just in general, I like to use that philosophical concept, but emotivism, in that our emotions basically do our value sorting for us, is essentially the same thing. But then we get from that, the fact of that also demonstrated by well-formed, well-modeled cognitive science, we then see, what kinds of things feel best for us to pursue. What are some presuppositions that really satisfy us in our gut? And that presupposition that drives me, that fundamental presupposition, is that health is preferential to sickness. Now, I'm not sure that there's ever been a human being who has ever lived that preferred sickness to health. There have been many human beings who've preferred death to living. Finding yourself in the worst kind of circumstance. And some might say, well, they would prefer sickness in those circumstances because sickness would be a quick route to dying. But sickness would not be the end in and of itself. So when I say health is preferential to sickness, and I say, I'm not sure if we've ever had a human being or we are capable of desiring sickness instead of health, like really desiring it. It's just really hard to come up with a scenario that sickness would be the ultimate goal, the end in and of itself, not sickness in service of some other thing, oh, I'm going to make myself sick because I believe it's what maybe this God wants. It wants me to suffer by way of sickness because that is the most righteous way to live. Then that would mean that God's ideal would be the ultimate end there within that calculus. So I think this is pretty universal. Health is preferential to sickness. And then from that, I go, oh, okay, so where do we best learn and model and come to understand how human health functions, how to maximize human health? And I would say our highest schools of learning in biology and medicine, these are the places where we best understand and apply health care based on objective standards, based on facts about physical, mental, and social health. So then you start realizing that, okay, from that presupposition, if my ultimate goal, whatever is going on, I want to maximize well-being, physical, mental, and social health for myself and those around me, because I presuppose that health is preferential to sickness. And I also presuppose that that's almost certainly what everyone else wants as well. So that's how I come to moral well-beingism. And that's essentially how I come to, science as a way of knowing. It is the most reliable way of modeling human health. It gives us amazing things like vaccinations that save lives. It allows us to save people from heart disease. It allows us to better understand brain disease and how to remove tumors before they kill individuals. All of this amazing stuff that comes from medical science. And one of the best things about it is, using science as a way of knowing is that it is always open to update. All modeling is provisional in that it is always open to update. Amazing thing. And that is also the first Pangburn virtue, fallibilism, with the corresponding maxim, certainty is almost certainly unattainable. My maxim is it's the final blow to dogmatism, or dogma meaning things that are believed to be incontrovertibly true. And we might cross through some of that today, talking about Jesus. But thank you everyone for joining us today. You can join the Discord server. I gave you guys the link. I forgot to pin it though. And let's get right into, now that you understand my calculus, let's get into Jesus. And I have a bit of my calculus here. So let's look at the moral goods first. Compassion towards the vulnerable. Very high in physical, mental, and social health from Jesus. Examples: healing the sick, feeding the hungry, helping the poor, caring for widows, caring for children, touching lepers, forgiving social outcasts. These generally increase all three dimensions of well-being. This is good behavior. This is good posturing. If I saw another human being doing this in the world, I would think that they were doing good, righteous things. The Good Samaritan ethic, one of history's strongest arguments against tribalism. Instead of helping only one's own group, help whoever needs help. The benefits: stronger social trust, less prejudice, more cooperation, greater empathy. Very positive with regards to physical, mental, and social health. Love your neighbor. This encourages kindness, charity, generosity, cooperation. These reliably increase social flourishing. And of course, whenever when we look at, the trifecta of well-being, physical, mental, and social health, and by the way, the reason why I break it down that way is because that's the way we break it down in medical science, well-being. Whenever we, have a positive effect on one's mental health, we are essentially affecting physical and social health as well, to some degree. Some things can be primarily affecting physical health, and then as a secondary affecting well-being, and then thirdly affecting social health. It can be balanced, but it's very difficult just to affect one aspect. They're all connected. And this is why they're all important, to make sure that if you feel physically fit and you have strong levels of mental health, but you have no social health, you aren't engaging in the intersubjective space at which us as a social ape species rely on. That can actually cause great levels of bad health all across the board for you. And I would say social health is one of the most neglected parts of our health. We hear about mental health all the time. We hear about physical health. We don't hear enough about social health, healthy relationships with your community, healthy conversations, these kinds of things. Jesus says, love your enemies. Although difficult, reducing revenge often decreases violence, retaliation, blood feuds. Modern psychology generally supports forgiveness when practiced in healthy ways. Potentially enormous social benefit there. Humility, warnings against arrogance, greed, status obsession can improve mental health and relationships. Charity, helping the poor, has obvious well-being benefits. Many hospitals, orphanages, and charities throughout history drew inspiration from these teachings. An amazing thing I love when I do my general scorecarding of Christianity's history and whether it had an overall positive effect on the human species or negative effect, it does drop slightly on the negative side, but the charity aspect, the overwhelming amount of charity that has been done by way of Christianity, by way of following Jesus's example, I think is one of the fantastic glowing lights born of Christianity. Anti-hypocrisy. Jesus repeatedly criticized corrupt religious leaders, performative morality, exploitation. These critiques encourage honesty and accountability. Human dignity. Eating with prostitutes, tax collectors, lepers, outsiders, reduced social exclusion. Golden rule, treat others as you wish to be treated. One of history's strongest heuristics for cooperation. The golden rule is kind of like a decent general rule, but it's not a good maxim. There are too many easy violations to this. Like, there are many people in your community where you're living today that think it's perfectly acceptable and should be allowed, to beat people up who disrespect you. for example. And they would say that, yeah, that's fine. If I disrespect the other person, they should be able to beat me up too. I would treat others, this would be me treating others as you wish to be treated. I would want to be treated that way too if I was disrespecting somebody. So this one, easy defeaters for the golden rule. So people who go around saying like, my moral system is the golden rule. Come on, we can do a lot better than that. Okay, now and we will eventually open the mics here, so get ready, folks. Moral failures. These are evaluated by the same standards I was talking about. Moral failures of Jesus. Eternal hell. This is arguably the largest moral failure. Jesus repeatedly teaches everlasting punishment. If hell is taken seriously, the suffering is infinite, irreversible, disproportionate. No finite crime plausibly justifies infinite suffering under a well-being ethic. So this is a overwhelming negative score. Now, there's a couple of caveats here. Jesus, the person, let's leave the God part out of it for a second, may have actually believed that he needed to save people from hell. Now, my biggest gripe here is that there's no good reason to believe that any hell exists. But if Jesus did believe, I could imagine myself in Jesus's shoes. If I all of a sudden have this revelation that like, oh, people who don't accept X are going to receive infinite, irreversible, disproportionate, burning fire, pain, suffering, choking, screaming, dying until the end of time. Then perhaps I could see wanting to warn people about that. So, but I think when I think about this in today's context and how much evil I see born out of threats of eternal hell, and by evil, of course, I mean just egregious, immense violations of my moral standards. So causing great, large amounts of well-being detriment, physical, mental, and social health detriment to children, to adults as well. But like imagine children being threatened with eternal hell as a reason to straighten up and do better. Again, there is this part of me that understands if I was a Christian and I truly believed hell existed and, people who haven't come to Jesus yet are on their way to hell. There's only one way to escape hell. I could perhaps see myself engaging in this thing that causes great detriments to people's well-being. But I still think it's bad. Ultimately, I measure this as bad because I think it's almost certainly false. It's only simply possible that hell exists, but possibility ought not weigh into our epistemic standards, into our standards of knowledge making. So is it plausible at all that hell exists? No, there's zero plausibility factor. There's zero likelihood that hell exists. So for that reason, this should never be told to children. This should never be grafted onto people. So it is a great evil to tell this to people. But I also have an understanding as to why this is said. I have a few more things to get through, and then I'm going to open the mics here. So do take your notes for people who are having things pop up. Belief over evidence. So verses emphasizing belief. Whoever believes, whoever does not believe. When eternal outcomes depend on belief, people become incentivized toward dogmatism, fear, motivated reasoning. This can reduce intellectual well-being. That can, of course, affect physical, mental, and social health. if you are told that, whoever does not believe X, again, is going to end up in a fiery pit, or is lesser than, or is just living in sin. This puts a lot of pressure on cognitively vulnerable people, and that pressure can result in things that are terrible for one's health, like cognitive rigidity. We don't want cognitive rigidity. We want cognitive flexibility. Cognitive flexibility is associated with high, maximization outcomes of physical, mental, and social health. We don't want to promote dogmatism. Dogmatism being, believing things incontrovertibly true. It's impossible that I'm wrong about this. This kind of attitude. It's not only counter to our nature, because we are never really closed off to update, but again, causes us to be cognitively rigid. Family division. Jesus says, "I came not to bring peace, but a sword. And whoever loves father or mother more than me." Commitment to religious identity above family can, of course, fracture relationships. Historically, this has happened frequently. So, family division, very bad principle. You must love me over your father, mother. Like this idea of God coming first, or Jesus, Son of God, whatever you think that relationship is, comes first. Very bad idea. Maximizing well-being for yourself and those around you is the good idea. Thought crime. Jesus expands sin to include lust, anger, internal thoughts. While encouraging self-control can be beneficial, moralizing involuntary thoughts often increases guilt, anxiety, shame. Modern psychology generally distinguishes intrusive thoughts from moral actions. So committing people of thought crimes, these internal thoughts you're having are somehow crimes, even though they're just happening to you. You're not some wizard at the top of the hill dictating your thoughts, creating them from scratch. So yeah, thought crime is a very evil idea. And I think Jesus expanded sin to include thought crime. Extreme self-denial. Teachings include deny yourself, hate your own life, carry your cross, sell everything. For some people, these inspire generosity, but for others, they encourage unhealthy asceticism, neglect of personal needs, vulnerability to exploitation. Apocalyptic urgency. Jesus appears to expect the imminent arrival of God's kingdom. This led many early followers to devalue long-term planning, institutions, ordinary life. Such expectations can reduce practical well-being if acted upon literally. Endorsement of Old Testament authority. Jesus says, "Not one jot or tittle shall pass from the law," without explicitly rejecting many harsh Mosaic laws, like killing homosexuals, right? Even if interpreted differently, this has historically allowed continued justification of harsh punishment, exclusion, intolerance. This might be one of the worst things about Jesus and what Jesus did, apparently. Seemingly endorsed the old laws. "I did not come to abolish the laws of the prophets. I came to fulfill them." Now, I would say that you could perhaps find a way to apologize for this and interpret this differently. But the fact that it's not made explicitly clear that, you shouldn't own other human beings as property. The endorsement of slavery by things like Exodus 21 and these things, I think Jesus is endorsing and not changing. Cursing the fig tree, destroying a tree for lacking fruit out of season, serves little well-being purpose and is often interpreted symbolically. Taken literally, it models punitive behavior towards something incapable of moral agency. Yeah, this is just an example of Jesus engaging in bad, wrongful behavior. It's bad and wrongful to curse the fig tree and destroying it for lacking fruit when it wasn't even in season to give fruit. That's something some angry lunatic might do. Exclusivism, statements such as "no one comes to the Father except through me," can encourage in-group, out-group thinking, religious conflict, exclusion of sincere non-believers. Historically, this has contributed to social division and even perhaps war. And finally, demonic explanations. Frequent attributions of illness or unusual behavior to demons may have reinforced supernatural explanations instead of encouraging natural investigation. There was the thing I want to go through before I open up when Jesus drowned the pigs. So the story appears in Gospel of Mark 5, 1 through 20, with parallel accounts in Gospel of Matthew 8:28 through 34 and Gospel of Luke 8, 26 through 39. So according to the narrative, Jesus encounters a man possessed by many demons, quote, legion. The demons ask to be sent into a nearby herd of about 2,000 pigs. Jesus permits this. The pigs rush down a steep bank into the sea and drown. The possessed man is restored while the local people are distressed and ask Jesus to leave. So let's evaluate this by maximizing well-being. Animal welfare. Roughly 2,000 pigs die. If animals have morally relevant interests in avoiding suffering, this is a substantial moral cost. Animals dying needlessly like this and drowning, and if you are to believe that Jesus is somehow connected with God or has godlike power, this is just maniacal design, in my opinion. Economic harm. The herd represents considerable wealth. The owners likely lost a major source of income and livelihood. Community well-being. The townspeople experience fear and economic loss. Their response is not celebration, but asking Jesus to leave. Yeah, they should ask Jesus to leave. Again, this is just if somebody was doing this, and again, like granting that Jesus has this power to allow demons to be cast into pigs, is there not some other way to do this? Like cast it into the blades of grass, and then the blades of grass wither away in the sun? Like, is this the best we can do, drowning pigs? Like, this is, again, bad and wrongful behavior. So anyways, I want to open the mics up here. And now I will say, after, everything I said there, I would still say in general, and I'm granting that Jesus, the man, if he did actually exist, which I think as a person he probably did, if he actually did believe that all these people who don't come to God through him are on their way to hell, or even some people were hellbound, and he wanted to warn people about that. Again, if I put myself in Jesus's shoes, I can understand why someone would want to warn people about that. And I think if I was in that position, I would warn people about that too. My overall assessment, we went through the positive stuff first and then the negative stuff, is that I would consider Jesus a good person. And I think there are many people out there today that do believe in hell and try to bring people to Jesus and to Christianity, to God, to try and save them from hell. But a lot of Christians I've met, the way that I talk to them about this, and the way that they talk about hell, or they say, well, I'd like to say a prayer for your soul or anything like that. That doesn't offend me. And again, if I believed the way they did, I would probably go about this in the same way. So many of those Christians, I think, are good people as well. But I want to give William a chance first, because I think, William, you said you didn't have a lot of time today. And I'm sorry that was such a long intro, but go ahead, William, if you have something to say.
I would just say that I agree with most of your moral outlook. I obviously think Jesus was a good guy, maybe the only good guy, but I think morality sometimes is about more than just the harm. It's also existential well-being and thinking of the future. So I think in his case, he wants to save us from our sins so we can be with him forever. So I think that'll make him more good of a good guy, even if he sometimes doesn't look like it.
And would you say, William, and I'm curious about this question, a lot of Christians I talk to would make the claim that Jesus was morally perfect, or absolutely good, or they would say things like this. I don't see any good evidence of that based on my the way I think about good, bad, right, and wrong in the world. So what do you think about that? Would you say that Jesus was perfect, or?
I don't know everything he did in the Bible, so I can't speak for everything, but aligning with scripture and my beliefs, I would say that he is perfect, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. Like even this idea of thought crime, like, that it's sinful to have particular kinds of internal thoughts.
Yeah, I struggle with that one.
Yeah.
I don't know if some things are like a willful choice in the heart, and some things are just an impulsive anxiety thing. So I guess it depends on context of the context of the thought crime.
Yeah.
Sorry, I wanted to interject. Can I?
Yeah.
Go ahead,
William.
William.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Luke. Yeah.
Yeah. So I heard a lot of I think in your judgment on how Jesus behaved and the choice he made. And this I think part, I think it was bad. I think he could have done better. I think, these are the things that I would argue are not supported by evidence. You don't have all the information about the context in which these specific events happen. and therefore your judgment is not one that could be made because you are missing some information about the context in which the event.
I think you're assuming I'm missing information. You can try to provide the context, for example, for like why cursing the fig tree was coherent or a good righteous thing to do. You can try to do that, but we can look we can add into today's reading more context on specific issues and get more detailed, but I don't think you know what context I'm operating on, within my mind. I provided some, cursory reading so that we could get some of this stuff out on the table today. But, in the many years I've been talking about this issue of cursing the fig tree, for example, I've yet to hear anyone provide a context where this seems coherent at all, like and also like drowning the pigs as opposed to casting the demons, or the demons being cast into something else. Like, why the pigs, why drowning, why can't Jesus just cast them into something else? Like, I've never seen anything to justify why it needed to be the pigs.
Yeah, well, again, who's judging? Who's making the judgment that the thing that you heard is better than what you proposed?
Well, I'm making, as a moral well-beingist, I am making the judgment. I am judging Jesus to be bad and wrongful on these particular occasions. In general, it's my opinion. Yeah, it's my opinion.
So other people could challenge you in your opinion.
Of course, yeah, and that's what we're doing here today, where everyone's here to share their moral opinion. Now, some people are going to think they have a morally real opinion in that it is grounded in something objective, but I think every human being in this room today and every human being that's ever lived engages in a Humean sentimentalism, in that they're sentimentally going about their value judging, including their moral value judging.
I just think that that's kind of tricky, because it makes sense when everyone comes together and decides like hurting people is wrong, but then there's some like nihilists that think that belief that hurting people is wrong is silly because they don't believe there's any good reason to truly believe that.
Yeah, I mean,
it's kind of hard to convince them that they're wrong.
Well, I mean, it can be hard to convince people of many things, but in the war of ideas, we see people adopt new perspectives all the time. So it's it's
so.
Yep.
Let's try the fig tree. If it was a teaching, a way that Jesus chose to teach something to others, would that be now acceptable, or would this way still be a bad way?
Well, I just think like, why this is the kind of behavior, like it reminds me of like some madman who like wanted figs from the fig tree, and the fig tree didn't produce fruit. The real reason being that it wasn't the season to producing fruit, and then they cut the tree down or uproot the tree, or destroy the tree.
I'm sorry, you're not answering my question. Could you repeat back the question to me, please?
No, you can repeat it if you want. I'm not going to repeat back to you your question.
Okay, I felt like you didn't hear me well when I asked the question, because the answer you were giving me is not related to the question I asked.
You can try. You can try asking again.
The question was, if it was a way for Jesus to educate the ones around them, and not really cursing a tree, but just a way that he used to educate them, would that still be a sin? It's a yes or no question.
A sin? No, it's not a
I would like
yes
to
or no.
answer
It's not a it's
thing,
not
a bad
no no
thing, a
no
bad
no no
thing.
no. I offer yeah, I was giving you my critique of the lesson.
Yeah, I would like to answer that.
So what do
Travis,
you
actually.
yeah, go ahead, Robin. But Luke, I was answering that exact question by giving a critique of the lesson. I was telling you why it's not a good or rightful lesson. It's incoherent lunacy in my view. So I'm just further explaining why I think it's not a good lesson, why it's a bad lesson. Go ahead, Robin.
Even
Well, I have an example
there
of.
would be better tools.
I have an example. This is why I do not think so, Luke. I do not think that he would be considered a moral teacher. Okay, this example right here is, to me, is one of his most egregious things. Okay, John 9:1-3 speaks of when Jesus heals a blind man. Okay, and he goes and his disciples ask him, "Oh, Rabbi, did this blind man sin or his parents? Who did the sin for what he is blind for?" And Jesus says, "Nobody carried the sin. Nobody sinned. This man was born blind to allow me to show the glory of God." So, like, this person, Jesus is saying that I intentionally created this human being and made them blind through no fault of their own or their parents, so I could come in and show how powerful I am. I think that is one of the most immoral stories that Jesus has about him in the Bible, actually. And I would say that anybody who says that they do something like that and put suffering on humans so they can show how powerful they are at curing suffering, it's like really demented. So
It is not the way
Pull up
that
that
people
verse.
heard the story
Oh,
understood
sorry,
the
man.
story. The way you present the
Thanks.
story wasn't understood by those who heard the story the way you present it.
Yeah, can you please
I
pull up
can read
that verse so I can, because I
It's-
thought like sin caused blindness, like people
John
cause
9:1-3.
genetic disorders gradually.
And his disciples asked him, they said, I can read it to you. It says,
Yes,
his
please.
disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "It was not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him."
Yeah, how do we how
Yeah,
do you
so how
answer
does
that?
that mean that the whole reason he was blind was so that they could save him?
Yes, so he was
So
made blind intentionally by God, so God could
Was
come
that a
along
secondary
30-some
reason or
years
was
later.
it the main reason?
So God could come along 30-some years later and show off in front of all his fans.
the way you interpret it is not the way that people who heard it interpreted it.
There's not any way to interpret it.
Luke,
Like
Luke, how do you interpret? Let's hear how Luke interprets that. I would be curious to hear that.
So it is
Objective.
a teaching from God. So when Jesus said it is why the reason why the person was blind is for him to be cured, he didn't say that he created the man blind for him to be cured. He said that this man was in his path because he needed to be cured by Jesus so that the glory of Jesus or God will be revealed. That's what he
Yeah, they
said.
didn't
It is
intentionally make him
different
blind.
than the idea of creating out of nothing something blind for only the purpose of it being cured.
Nope.
It's a genetic disability, which means that it probably occurred naturally.
It says in there that they thought that being blind was a curse, that it was caused on you by something you did or your parents did. So if you were born blind in Judaism, if you were born blind or with a disability of any kind, that was seen as a sin that your parents had committed, and that's why you were born that way, or a sin that
Sometimes smoking and stuff does cause those disabilities.
what the way that they thought in this time, not what we know now. So, like Jesus, so the disciples asked when they saw this man who had been born blind, they said, "Why is this man blind? Was it because of a sin he caused, or he did, or his parents did?" And Jesus said, no, it was so that we could show glory of God in it. So, like, in their mind, like in Judaism, in ancient Israel, like that, that was the way they thought. They thought that he was born blind because of sin. They didn't understand these kind of conditions.
Yeah.
I think
that was well said, Robin.
Yeah.
You can't answer for them. I just never heard a good answer. And I've got one more I can tell too. Like he also lies to his disciples about going to the festival. And I can tell you, he tells a lie, even though he says you're not supposed to lie. He does lie to his disciples.
Well, Robin's looking that up. With regards to the Gospel of John 9:1-3, like we were just talking about, an alternative interpretation, alternative scholarly interpretation by apologists and other people is more like neither this man nor his parents sinned, but let the works of God be displayed in him. We must do the works of him who sent me while it is day. So there is a softening there. So the traditional. So one of the.
What's up, Zemo?
What's up,
yeah,
Zemo?
baby.
Let's make sure everyone is muted. William, can you be muted? Like when you don't have something to say, that would be great. So
I'll be muted.
Yeah. So the traditional interpretation, God permitted or ordained the blindness so that God's glory would later be revealed. And then the alternative interpretation, Jesus rejects speculation about the cause and simply calls for responding compassionately by healing the man. So I think a lot of Christians, Robin, are going to respond with this alternative interpretation. Yes. But yeah,
I know. I've heard it. Like, and it to me, it just doesn't. It does not. That's not what the text says. They like to change what the text says.
Right. So yeah, different.
What would prove you wrong, Barbin?
There's one more.
What would prove you wrong, Barbin? It seems like anything that would be presented to you would not prove you wrong. It is impossible for you to be wrong in your interpretation.
Well, because you're Luke. Like, I'm sorry, but you don't give me any answers that are like acceptable to what I'm at with the questions I ask. You give me these apologetics that come from your church, and they're not suitable. I know y'all think they are, but they're not. When you critically examine them, they're not suitable answers.
I'm sorry, did you hear the question?
I had one more issue, one more thing.
Did you hear the question I asked you, Robin? What would prove you wrong?
So first of all, it would not be where somebody can tell me that I can't understand what words mean. Okay. And you have no more access to interpreting the Bible than I do. So I doubt that you would be able to there's no human that could come in and say, unless they can come in and say, this was not, we know for a fact this was forgery. I can interpret words the same as you, and you have no more access to interpretation tools than I do.
What I hear is that nothing could ever prove you wrong. Is that your answer?
About certain things, yes. But no, you're not going to convince me that I'm wrong about this based on because you have no more access to interpreting words than I do.
Well, I think I think it might be a better posture to be open to that Luke might have something to convince you, and I think we should be open to interpreting that and sharing it. But it can sometimes be difficult.
What's the purpose of asking the question if nothing can prove you wrong?
Well, so that's I think, Luke, that is a fair question. That's why, I think fallibilism ought be our first operating principle, but it can also be difficult. I don't know is a fair answer when we don't know what would change our mind with regards to a particular interpretation. But instead of trying to get Robin to provide, what would change her mind, people who have a different interpretation of this scripture could try offering something. I offered, a very common alternative interpretation I'm reading here, that Jesus rejects any speculation about the cause and simply just focuses on responding compassionately to this person who is blind and trying to heal them. But I do think that, it's easy to come to the conclusion Robin came to if you're just doing an analysis of what the text.
Hey, Travis.
Yeah.
Hey, I was just going to say, the more I read about this Jesus guy, the more that I like him.
Fair enough. So yeah, but like I can see how it's a more plausible interpretation, the way Robin is reading it. I think it does take some level of apologetic to get to the more common interpretation. But I also understand that if you have faith in Christianity and Jesus and in Scripture, I think the idea of the natural reading is to find good in it, not simply critique it or bring a negative utilitarian critique lensing. I think like good textual analysis requires both kinds of lensing, the positive utility and negative utility, to try and understand how people who are reading this passage positively might be interpreting this. I think it gives you a more holistic view. But for me, I would agree that based on the words alone that I'm reading, it's easy for me to interpret it the way Robin is interpreting it as well.
Can I say something, Trav, or are there like rules right now? I don't know what I jumped into.
there are rules, and there have been people waiting before you joined Zemo. So maybe if you could keep muted for a bit, and then
well, it's real short. It'd take like 15 seconds, but if
okay,
somebody
say it.
really...
Yeah, go. It's 15 seconds. Go ahead.
All I was going to say is that I was always taught and heard that it's very important to like at least have an idea of what it would take to prove you wrong, because otherwise, if you can think of nothing that can prove you wrong, hypothetically even, then like you're not really basing it off of evidence. You know what I mean?
I don't think that's a good principle, Zemo, and I'll tell you why. So when it comes to the logical absolutes,
I'd love to hear one.
Yeah, when it comes to the logical absolutes, the law of identity, the law of exclusion, all of these things,
contradiction.
Trying to come up with something, an idea that could prove you wrong, or a contradiction, or something like that, is it's seemingly impossible, but I think it would be logically incorrect to call it impossible. But I still think it's sound to believe that the logical absolutes are sound and valid. But I don't want to get too far down that track. The question today is, was Jesus a good person? And we're calling upon everyone in the room, whether you're Christian or not, or whoever, calling upon your own notions of good, bad, right, and wrong, and making an assessment on Jesus's character. It doesn't have to, it can just be a gut assessment. You can assess based on one particular issue, multiple issues, but try to articulate your own moral system and how you go about judging the person, the behaviors of Jesus. Luke, I see you unmuted again. Do you what do you think of Jesus? Is Jesus a good person, or was a good person?
Yes.
Yeah.
So here is the argument for Jesus being a good person.
Yeah.
When you have God that is a real God, and a God that wants to interact with the Word, he will use his tricks, stuff that allows us to be able to recognize him as such a being. One of the things that he would do is proclaim himself to be God. If he were to take flesh, he would say, I am God. And the other thing that we expect to see in the Word is miracles. So we do know that those two things happened with Jesus, based on the conclusion that Jesus is God and that morality is based on God. Whatever God does, whatever God says is what is good. I can conclude that Jesus is good.
Fair enough. Does anyone disagree with any of that calculus? I came to the general assessment. Yeah, and we'll go to Brett, and we'll go Brett next, and then Simos. But I wanted to say, for the record, for anyone that has came, I also did conclude. Yeah. Okay, we can go Brett, then Zemo, then Simos. But I just wanted to say, yeah, and then make sure we're muted if you're not speaking, because we do have quite a few people in the room and don't want too many interruptions. But I also came to the conclusion that, as a general assessment, based on the good things and the negative things, based on my moral well-beingism, that I think Jesus was generally a good person. So Luke and I agree on that as kind of our final assessment, final answer. But then we came to that conclusion by very different standards. But let's go Brett first, and then we'll go Zemo, then Simos.
Okay with my AirPods?
Sorry, try that again.
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
I can. It's like when you start talking, I can't quite hear you, but then when when you continue talking, you become clear. So we could try it out.
Yeah, I'll keep talking, and I think it's an AirPod issue, but just let me know here in a short bit if it stops. So basically, Luke, to your point a second ago, one of the major issues I see with your argumentation is that people, like we're doing now, like we're seeing right now in live time, is the interpretation of various stories and whatnot. And to me, that's one of the crux reasons why it's just not, at the end of the day, the morals can be very true of a lot of the stories that Jesus talked about or was told about him, since he never actually wrote any of it. But simultaneously, you don't have one group of people that are actually speaking for a given deity. You have people that claim they are. You have people that will claim one interpretation is right over another, just like Catholic versus Protestant, or Sunni versus Shiite in Islam. But those are not substantial arguments to go off of, because people go very quickly from this interpretation is correct, I'm going to follow it, which would be no issue there if a person wanted to do that, right, for themselves and their direct family. But then people throughout history have basically said, no, this is the right interpretation. I'm going to follow it, and I'm going to, in some way, force in society, including you, the person I'm talking to follow it because of my insecurity, because of my my unwillingness to admit that a lot of this is open to interpretation. And so, I could go a little bit more, but I'll try to wrap it up quick. It's just basically that the moral can be a great thing to follow. the Sermon on the Mount, the Golden Rule. I understood your critique earlier, Trav. I have some more I could go trying to go back and forth with that, but the Good Samaritan, definitely a good one. Those are great stories to follow and try to learn the wisdom from and talk about them and see what they could look like in different scenarios like we do on here on Pangburn. But as soon as people start claiming that, one person in history is in fact the deity or their interpretation is correct, people just have a very bad track record of other people saying to them, no, we don't agree with you, and then humans trying to make civilization work. Because to me, the moral is beyond sectarianism. That would be, Trav, like the phrase you said at the beginning, that's the phrase I would use, is that the moral is beyond human tribalism that, divulges often into dehumanizing one another. But I'll stop there.
Well, Brett, before we get Luke's response, and Luke can have a response if he wants before we go. Oh, it looks like we lost Zemo, but we'll go to Simos then. Brett, what is your general assessment on the person that Jesus apparently was?
Yeah, the person. I'm in agreement. I'm in agreement with you and Luke. I think overall, I studying the history I do. There's a couple of sources that say he was a real person. It still is not as solid as other figures in history to a given degree with various historical documents. But assuming he did exist, yeah, I think as a person, just the ideas he was trying to spread and, seeking a kind of a self inside, if you will, and to make good decisions and to understand that you can change and you can grow as a person. My mother, who passed away a couple of years ago, she followed him her entire life, and she lived the life of everyone was welcome in our house. Everyone, she treated everyone with very good compassion and love, a very good example that I try to follow. And so, yeah, I think as a person, as an inspiration, yes, I would agree more on the one side that he would, that he has that good inspiration.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. And then I just wanted to understand more, Brett, because I think it's good exercise. And how would you articulate how any of this behavior is good at all, that you are calling good? What are you using to measure good in the world?
Sure. So there's several factors you could use. I mean, one of the basic ones is that I think that things like bodily autonomy and not wanting, your stuff stolen or to be physically harmed and whatnot, I think they're just self-evident in the sense that human beings don't want that to happen to themselves. There might be a few portion of the population that, don't care or don't have a sense of well-being in some regard because of something they were born with. But I think that those portions are self-evident. And I would argue that it's just, if you actually want to see human flourishing in society, those social agreements, maybe there's a little biology, maybe there is a little, our quest to make just, human groups work because we are social animals. I do also think that every human being, has inherent value to a given degree, which I know can get challenging with, those who commit crimes and such. But I'm kind of where I usually land is like, to me, it's self-evident that the goodness that you want for yourself, you have to be willing to give that to other people. Otherwise, you really, when people don't do that, you don't have a functioning society.
I think you described a lot there, Brett. You didn't give a lot of prescriptions. Sure. What is something like, for example, do you think it was good that Jesus tried to or did heal the sick, for example?
So
is that a good thing?
Yeah, I think overall it is a good thing. I think that human beings. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
So
go ahead.
So you agreed that that's a good thing. So you've made a prescription. Now I'm just trying to understand what is enforcing that prescription. What is the Is it because we ought maximize health for human beings? Like, what is your ought statement? What is the prescriptive nature? Not describing like, because human beings like being healthy. Not like the descriptive nature, but I'm trying to get you to put your prescriptive flag in the ground, and like, this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong to you, not about what, you know, other people might say or whatnot. I'm just going to disable your video, Zemo. We don't want guns in the video and pointing guns at the screen. So what is your prescription? Like, when you're at the end of the day, you're putting your flag down in the ground with regards to Jesus. Where did Jesus do something good, and where did Jesus do something wrong?
I don't. So I don't really know how to describe it more than, to me, it is those good ethics, if you will, are self-evident in human interaction.
What about someone who disagrees with you on that? Like, if they say, you know, it's self-evident that you shouldn't spank your child if they do something wrong, and then someone comes along and says, well, it's not self-evident to me. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good way to teach. It goes off. You could go off of. This is why I said in the beginning, you could go off of a number of reasons. You could go off of. I'm not saying, science, but Brett, sorry, Brett. 2 seconds. I'm not saying what anyone could go off of. I'm asking you specifically what you go off of.
I go off of a touch of science, of what modern science would say about how interactions with adults and kids in that specific example has grown over time, and the literature and research has shown that physical abuse is actually not something beneficial for children at all. In fact, it has a lot of lasting harm and whatnot.
Okay, so we got the sign, and I'm interrupting because I don't want to get lost into another descriptive net. So you just said science describes that spanking a child can cause, let's say, some trauma, and you think trauma is bad. Why? And if you say self-evident, that doesn't deal with the disagreement you might have with someone who just disagrees that level of trauma is bad for teaching children.
See,
can I jump in here when y'all are done?
No, Zemo. We'll go to you after Brett. We're on something very important and specific here.
That's what I mean. After y'all get done, that's what I said.
Yeah.
Part of the way that I take it from this, of why I'm stating that, is because I think that the majority of mentally sound human beings agree that this interaction between people is not acceptable, and that's why we obviously base laws off of it. I don't deny that those people still, you're going to have whatever percentage of the population that will not just be disagreeable, but that will actually be willing to harm others because they, like you correctly pointed out, right? There's, they would basically argue that it's not a objective ethic and whatnot, but
yeah, the question, so we don't get too lost in description again, because we keep leaning into description. So the question was, okay, you're using science as a way of knowing, and and you're also having science as a way of knowing where certain traumas can exist with regards to parenting, with regards to this spanking issue. So you're using this, but the question, the prescriptive question, the ought question, the moral subjectivist question, because I know you're not a moral objectivist or a moral realist, is why is it good to not spank children and perhaps cause them a bit of trauma while correcting behavior? Because if you keep describing reality, like if you say, well, it's because I look around and most people think it's bad, then you're engaging in a kind of morality that is dictated by popularity. And if we put you into Nazi Germany as a German, there's going to be obvious scenarios where we put you where that falls apart, right? So I guess, and we can move on to someone else if you want to think about this more, but we really want that thing. Like for me, let me articulate to you the reason why it's bad to spank children, because like you said, we have really good clinical psychological evidence to suggest that spanking children only teaches them that so long as you're around, they're going to get abused in this way if they get caught doing a certain thing. It doesn't teach them long-term goals or greater, higher transcending reasons as to why they shouldn't be doing something. And the physical abuse itself can cause trauma by way of pain signals and all kinds of things. So this is well understood. And the reason why I care about all that is because we ought be maximizing well-being, physical, mental, and social health for ourselves and those around us, children included. So that's my flag in the ground that is simply born of my sentiments, my moral quest, which is different than simply just assuming that a potential measurable trauma towards kids by way of spanking is going to be agreed upon by conscious creatures like ourselves. Does that delineation make sense between the descriptive and the prescriptive?
Yeah, it does. I agree with basically everything you said. I'm not going to continue with the point I have, because I want to make sure, like you said, we don't diverge too much, because I have a thought on that.
I'd love to hear it. I'm fine spending time on this, but
okay. This is the critique that I've offered before, which I understand is vague, and for some people it doesn't, like, as humans, as our species, I don't know if you want to use the word evolves, I think that some of these truths, / if you don't want to call them truths, these observations and these observations and then descriptions of, or these scenarios of what are going on, I think it becomes all the more evident as humanity goes on. But yeah, I don't know that I have it fully fleshed out to talk right now on it, and I don't want to hog the mic for other people. Yeah. I'll stop it by saying I do agree with what you said on the flourishing of well-being. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, look,
I'm with you there.
Look, if that's for me as a moral agent, those are the metrics I care about and where I think the good life is nested in. And I too, like you, use science as a way of knowing. And I think we have a lot of really good literature on spanking children and why it's just ultimately, it's not necessarily the case that all levels of spanking are going to cause trauma, but what we can demonstrate is that there is a risk there, and we can demonstrate that spanking doesn't teach a damn thing. Like spanking, as soon as the agent who does the spanking is removed from the problem, oh shit, I'm not going to be spanked for this anymore. Well, yeah, I guess I don't have to worry about that. Like this is well known in child psychology and parental psychology. So
that's a great point. That's a great point. If I could just really quick, because like the fear motivator is not a good, like that might be so in some life instances where it needs to occur for various reasons, but in that quote unquote, like if you would, corporal punishment of the child, like it's human beings, not, adult human beings being upset about what the scenario is going on and wanting, a quick resolution.
Right.
But like, it's one thing if your child's in immediate danger and you grab them or something and you scold them a little because it was like they literally could have been killed by something, like running out in the street with a car or something. But that's on the rare side of where it needs to go to that kind of interaction, if you will. Go ahead.
Okay. Thanks, Brett. Awesome stuff there. Working through this articulation. Zemo, what do you got? And then we're going to go to Simos. Make sure if you aren't speaking, keep your self muted. We will eventually get to you. Zemo, go ahead.
Oh, what's up? First off, that gun was a airsoft, but I won't show it.
Yeah, people don't. Gun. Yeah, people don't know that, so it's
yeah. If you see the orange tip, but anyways, well, I was just I never answered that Jesus question because my phone cut off, but first I talking about like what y'all were just talking about. I basically agree with your moral system, like sort of the Sam Harris and combination like Sam Harris and Matt Dillahunty, spreading well-being for conscious creatures and stuff like that, for health and well-being.
The difference is though is they don't articulate, Zemo, physical, mental, and social health as the basically the definition of what kind of well-being they're promoting, and I think that's a problem, and I think they should be articulating that clearly. But I just wanted to outline the difference. It's not that they never say that, but it's not made explicit, and I think that's a problem. But continue, please.
Well, Sam is a neuroscientist, so he definitely focuses, on the deep inside of your own mind. But I think the social is sort of neglected a lot. Like, like cracking a joke or saying something funny when you're with a group of friends, like to me, it could be moral compared to like holding that in because, it can make people laugh. It can make break some ice and like those sort of things. Like we don't really think of those as moral or immoral, but if you believe in like spreading well-being and stuff, like that sort of is a moral thing to do. You know what I mean? Like tell a good joke in front of a group of your friends. You know what I mean? Like some. But I was gonna say the reason, like, say, abusing a child or spanking a child, I'm for spanking, but as long as it does not like get crazy and the kid understand what it means. And when I say crazy, like harmful, like just pain. Like stinging pain. But
I do want to steer us away from that. I do want to steer us away from the spanking thing because I don't want this stream to become about that, but more on Jesus if you could.
Yeah. Real quick on that, I was just going to say that the reason things like harm are bad is because like conscious states have an ontological status, in my opinion. Like it's irreducible when you're in a painful or unpleasant conscious state. Like it's irreducible to that. You can tell me all the chemicals that are in my brain that are making me feel that way. But when it comes to it, the actual experience itself, its very existence and what makes it a thing is the feeling of badness, or on the opposite end, goodness, pleasantness, happiness, So that's what makes it valuable inherently. is that quality. So anyway, I think that's where Sam Harris tries to say that it's objective, because he's saying the experience is ontologically and objectively painful or negative.
Yeah, it's this weird thing with some moral realists where they don't provide the object or the answer to the is-ought gap, and
Right.
they're they still claim that there are moral facts, but it's a conflation of the terms. Sam Harris will use examples that, like, if you put your hand on a hot stove, there's a good reason, inarguably good reason why it's a good thing, the right thing to remove your hand, but that's a conflation of the terms. It's that's not what we're talking about when we talk about the realm of ought and should, when we talk about normativity. It's basically just trying to say, like, well, I mean, all human beings are going to want to pull their, unless they think, even though it's so painful, the more they put their hand on it, the more it appeases the stove burn God, and they're going to keep doing that, and they fundamentally believe it's for their well-being, and they have different notions of what well-being is, where if I say well-being is grounded in physical, mental, and social health, I can demonstrate factually why putting your hand on a hot stove is bad, based on our ideas of physical, mental, and social health. There are facts about those categories, but ultimately those facts come to me by way of Humean sentimentalism, by my sentiments. I have a presupposition that health is preferential to sickness, even if someone wants to say, well, that's pretty, I mean, I think every human being believes that. Yeah, even if they believe that health is preferential to sickness, that is still it's a preference, it's a value, it's born of your feelings. There's nothing written in reality that says you, because of this presupposition, this feeling you have that health is better than sickness, that you ought pursue it, that it's good to pursue it. It's not written on a rock anywhere or given to us in a book, or
it's like that saying by Schopenhauer, I might butcher it, you can do or not do what one wills, but you cannot will or unwill what you will. You know what I mean? You can't choose your desires,
Yeah, I mean, we are slaves. Hume talked about us being slaves to our passions, our desires.
Yeah, and we ride the elephant.
Yeah, and I think our best cognitive science outlines that. So Zemo, do you have like a final idea about whether or not Jesus was a good person, if Jesus did in fact exist?
Yeah, well, I think the person Jesus certainly existed, from everything I've seen. I think even most atheists say that. I do think he was a good person. I think he was a moral teacher. And, even though in my opinion, he's wrong about the idea that souls exist, his fundamental desire was to save people's souls. And if you listen to some of the things he said, especially to the Pharisees, once he obviously came back from John the Baptist and the 40 days in the desert, he certainly was preaching. He was saying things to the Pharisees that were like very, very highly intelligent, that had lessons and moral things built into like the story.
Yeah. Okay.
He was radical. He was radical for his time. Like he was a radical. That's why he got killed. I'm still confused as to why he got killed. Like I know why they say he got killed, but it still seems to me like a guy like preaching his own religion, basically starting what people might have called a cult, like would cause a religious or a crucifixion.
Yeah.
But and healing people, creating a bunch of fish for people to eat out of too, and bread, that's good, healing lepers, and they come up and they say, you did it on the Sabbath, and he's like, Sabbath was made for man, not the man for Sabbath, which I think is a thing we can look at, like in modern context, where it's the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like if I jaywalk across the street to give a lady CPR, I broke the law, but I did the right thing, right? So, yeah, I'll end it there. But yeah, Jesus was absolutely a moral person, and I'm sure people can make arguments about certain things he said, abandon your family and things like that. But at the bottom, he definitely was a moral person in my eyes.
All right.
100%.
Thanks, Zemo. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to.
Thanks for letting me speak.
Yeah, of course. I want to move to Simos. By the way, everyone, just before anyone who's listening or comes across this video, or everyone in the Discord server here, tomorrow we're going to deal with the question: was Jesus wise? That's going to cause everyone to call upon their mechanisms, their metrics of measuring wisdom. So we will do that tomorrow, getting feedback from someone's mic. But yeah, go ahead, Simos. And if you're not speaking, please make sure you are muted. Go ahead, Simos.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Yeah, so, okay, so the thing I was originally going to speak on is probably no longer germane. So let me go back to flipping to what I was originally going to speak on, which came up because of the fig tree parable. And I think it's a good example of exactly, and it kind of ties in with what Zemo was just talking about as well. So that is to say, why was Jesus crucified? And, clearly it's not for the reason, or some of the reasons given in the Bible. I don't think the Bible is a particularly accurate historical document for various reasons. Firstly, the supernatural claims are, very difficult to justify in this case, and certainly in order to do so, you'd have to use some kind of circular reasoning. But apart from that, what I like about the fig parody, or what do they call them?
Parody. You had it right.
Yeah, I think I did. Yeah,
Parable.
just is this slip of the tongue? Slip of the
The
tongue.
parable.
Parable. Thank you, Zemo. Thank you. Yeah, parable is that it really points to the dilemma of asking a question like, "Is Jesus good?" Because, the Romans crucified people for very few crimes, right? Well, unless they were poor. So yeah, maybe Jesus falls into that category, but normally it's things like insurrection or sedition or treason, or there's a few other reasons why they might, like if you're a slave or something like that and you rebel against your masters. But normally it's some kind of sedition, and I think the fig tree is a very good example here of why the Romans would want to crucify somebody like Jesus, who, if he went around preaching a parable about, finding a barren fig tree, which in Roman mythology is, of course, tantamount to the health of the Roman Empire, and what good can come from the Roman Empire as a result,
Right. Yeah.
then it seems to me that is a direct attack upon the Roman Empire and the values that it has. So that would be enough for sedition almost in itself, if it was deemed by whomever the authorities that that was or to be concluded that parable was about the Roman Empire itself, and that's a matter of interpretation, which is really what it's about. Is Jesus good? Well, it depends what side you're on. If you're on the Roman side, then clearly he's a bad person because he's going around teaching that without Christianity the Roman Empire is doomed, and at that time, of course, that's an insult to the gods of Rome, and especially the emperor, which is definitely punishable by as a sedition and treason, and so
Can I
definitely
make a
punishable
quick comment?
by not really. I like just a point of order, but I'll take it at the end, kind of thing.
All right.
So yeah, so I think that in itself is a good reason for the Romans to consider Jesus a bad person. And as I say, if you consider something like moral well-being for society, it certainly isn't good for the Roman society. But that's not to say that, as the phrase goes, Che Guevara was a good person to his people. Right, so one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, and yeah, I think that's possibly what is under discussion here. It's just in how do you interpret and which side are you on in terms of whether you side with people who think the Roman Empire is a bad thing and needs to be taken down because they're conquerors, etc., or whether you think that the Roman Empire is a force for good at that particular time, and therefore Jesus and anybody trying to bring the Roman Empire down is bad. And obviously, in that particular area, you would have to go with good, because they'd obviously tried to conquer several times, and I would imagine a large percentage of the people were unhappy with it being conquered by Rome. Although the advantages to being within the Roman Empire were quite considerable. So there's an argument both ways, even if you are one of the conquered peoples. But I know the British didn't like it when Rome conquered Britain,
Right.
and it was certainly to the detriment of the Celts and the Druids, especially.
So
So
I guess considering all of this stuff, considering the character of Jesus, considering what we know of this person who apparently existed, if he was, here today, Simos, doing a lot of these same things, like preaching a lot of these same things, trying to help people, and but still, warning people about hell and whatnot, would you consider this kind of person a good person, with based on your moral standards and based on kind of generally what you've kind of outlined, like some of the history and how some people might feel depending on what side you're on, but like, what side are you on? What are your assessments?
Okay, yeah. So I think if Jesus were about today in America, he would be considered left-wing, anti-patriotic. He'd be against the war in Iran. He'd be against the Iraq invasions. He'd be against all of these things, simply because that's it's an extension of territory, which is just going to be immoral. If you take the fig tree analogy seriously, that is. Right. No, do we need to make everybody Christian? No, we don't need to make everybody Christian. And so therefore, Christians can't even agree what type of Christian Jesus was, let alone, how he felt about other religions, especially other religions from the book. So, being a Jewish man, I would understand him to be for Christianity as well as Islam equally. I just think that the question is a historical question. I don't think it is a modern day question. But when you transfer the preachings from the Bible, or at least some of the preachings, because I think the Bible is a very inaccurate book to be judging history on, then I think that clearly there's some overlap here between what got Jesus killed or crucified specifically versus why he wasn't dealt with by shall we say the fraternizers with the Roman Empire within his own power like state.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's what they're calling the Sanhedrin and the other priests, right? They're calling them fraternizers.
Right. So I think all of that again was more description, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
You described what it would look like in a modern context. So I was curious about your prescription, like
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so yeah, just to give that, I think that yeah, it's very hard to say so, right? I come from a society which is heavily Christianized, and to say that that's a bad thing seems to me incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
So but I don't think it's a good question. It's an ill-defined question in terms of, is Jesus good? Simply because it depends on your perspective.
Well, I'm asking your perspective. That's what we're doing here.
Yeah, my personal perspective is that in the majority of the teachings are themselves good. And if that makes somebody good because a lot of their teachings are good and only some are bad, well, I would just go to the argument that that it's a good thing that some of the ancient wisdoms were passed through Christianity into Europe, because that was really needed. I don't think that's a lot to do with Jesus, number one. It's more to do with Christianity, so I'd want to separate those two things.
Right.
But nonetheless, in that case, in the simplistic form of the question, then I'd say I tend to agree that Jesus is good. But just because Hitler loved his dog, it doesn't mean I think that Hitler's a good person either. So
sure. I mean, I think that's a different.
Good and bad is not mutually exclusive in this case. The same with Jesus. I bring a sword.
Yeah.
So.
It's interesting that you think that the question is lacking something. Like the question is very clearly asking, like, for your prescriptions, your shoulds, your oughts, and I'm not, and I'm just saying this as a general statement. Atheists and secular people, and I've noticed this over my 10 years professionally working with them, they have a real fucking hard time just giving a goddamn prescription or ought to a simple prescriptive question that calls, and part of it is because there's not enough emphasis in secular communities and in atheist communities to put the onus on the individual to be able to articulate their shoulds, their oughts. This should be a slap down easy thing for individuals to do, and I'm not saying it's not easy for you, but there is this tendency to lean into the descriptive nature, to say there's something wrong with the question, to say the question's the problem, when really the problem is the individual, for some damn reason, won't put their damn moral stick in the ground and say, yeah, Jesus was a good person for these reasons and a bad person for these reasons, so I guess generally good. You know what it's?
I think that's
what I mean?
kind of what I came to when you asked me specifically for my reason. Okay. It's Hitler loved his dog. He was a good person for loving his dog. But I just think that also one of the reasons for, I think, the atheist and skeptic communities being, shall we say, fence sitters, is that there are so many different interpretations for Christianity, right? That it depends which kind of Christian you're talking about. If you're talking about Calvinists, then Jesus is just a bad person. If you're talking about Trinitarians that wholeheartedly are Bible inerrantists, you're talking about Jesus being a bad person.
But again, you're talking about what they might say, or looking at it through that lens.
No.
The question is about what Simos Funk,
I see.
it thinks is good and bad in the world, and how you would lay that judgment on Jesus, the same way that we judge all kinds of good and bad. Like this bomb was dropped today, and they accidentally dropped it on a school full of children, and every child died. Was that a good thing, bad thing, right thing, wrong thing? I think this should be something easy for human beings to do. It's one of the most important tasks of a moral creature, is to be able to articulate our oughts and shoulds, I think.
I get what you're saying. I get
Yeah.
what you're saying, indeed. And
Yeah.
like, I don't have any problem with saying, look, obviously Jesus is a bad person. He killed 6 million Jews. Obviously he's a bad person, right? I mean, this just is a no. You know, it goes without saying, right, that all of the historical bads in this
Yeah.
world, all of the bads in nature, all of the bads in suffering, etc., all of the arguments like that make me not a Christian mean that I think that naturally he's a bad person.
This is a
Right?
fantastic point. I love this point. If I can just say, like, we haven't gone there yet about this connection between Jesus and God. Now, I approached the question initially as, like, you know, Jesus is just like another human being. Yeah, he has all these claims about being connected to God, but, you know, I was judging his human behavior. But I couldn't agree with you more. If Jesus is in fact God, you know, or connected to God's plan, or is part of the same, you know, entity that created all of this, then yeah, Jesus also, just like Yahweh, has to answer for you know, brain cancer in children, and whoever created that in this creation, the potentiality for that. Some people would say, well, no, it's the fall of man and you know, sinful man that caused leukemia. Yeah. And it's like, no. God apparently created the potentiality for that to happen. Like, that's a sick fucking being if that is the case, if Jesus is in any way connected to that enterprise.
Yeah, it does say in the Old Testament, God created the good and evil. Or
right.
calamity, whichever you prefer.
Right. So,
but it's either a problem of calamity or not. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it depends on the perspective, of course. This was my main point, and you know, it's not that I'm against people who are Christian as such. It's just that I see that there's so many logical inconsistencies with trying to decide what kind of Jesus you're talking about, that the question seems difficult to answer, and that was the point there. If you want me to be definite about it, there's a reason I'm not a Christian,
right?
And that necessarily entails that you know, that anybody to do with the Godhead is going to be evil.
Yeah, I think despite Jesus's obvious shortcomings, and I outlined them earlier today, and we'll go to Robin next, and then we'll open it up for anyone else who wants to share. You know, despite
to remind you that Zemo had a point of order he wanted to make.
Yeah, okay, we'll go to Zemo then Robin. But I despite the shortcomings, I just based on my understanding of the Jesus, the character in the Bible, and the behaviors, assessing those teachings and whatnot, I do think there is a moral well-beingist there that makes mistakes, it does stupid things. So kind of like if someone today is a moral well-beingist, you know, whether they have the right thing in mind, but they also are making some mistakes and doing some stupid things, I could still look at that person and say, well, I still think they're generally a good person, but you know, there are some things that they've done are quite questionable, and some of them are bad and wrongful. You know, when I try to think about the character of Jesus. But yeah, Zemo, go ahead. If you had something.
Yeah. Yeah, I just had to unmute. Just thanks, Simus, for remembering. I just heard you earlier say it, and I don't know if you misspoke or but you know, you mentioned the Romans getting mad and crucifying Jesus, but you know, from the Gospels, it becomes clear that it's really the modern Jews and the temple and obviously the Sanhedrin that got him in trouble. They're the ones that would ask him trick questions like, should we pay taxes? Should we not pay taxes? And he gave the brilliant response of, bring me the coin whose head is on the coin. render unto Caesar, that sort of thing. Um, so I just wanted to point that out, that like fundamentally, Christianity and Judaism are at odds because of that very important and very real part of the story of Jesus Christ, because he was left, right, and center being attacked by the very powerful, very well respected, very honorable, and if you crossed them or said they were wrong or said something to contradict them, they got very, very pissed, and basically, they were under occupation, and so they couldn't kill Jesus themselves. That would be like vigilante violence. So they, basically they say that when they talked to Pontius Pilate, some people say that Pontius Pilate probably didn't even get spoken to. Probably somebody under Pontius was told, and instead of asking Pontius Pilate to kill Jesus or not, he already didn't even bother him because he knew he would say yes. Like it would be like an obvious thing to like not even think to bother Pilate over this. Like, yeah, kill him. He's doing this and that. And yeah, he was undermining Roman lore, but Romans were known for taking in gods and sort of making everything peaceful and, letting people do their own thing as long as they pay their taxes. But, with the Sanhedrin, what was another question they asked him? Oh, he said the famous thing, that people claim is him saying he's God, before Abraham was, I am. And, they got very mad at that. Obviously during his trial, he said something referring to an old prophecy. And that's when the guy ripped his clothes. And that was like the final straw. So I was just wanting to make sure people understand that part of the story of Jesus Christ.
I think there's a couple of things in there which I think have been added on after the Jesus' lifetime, probably some generations later.
Perhaps.
And I
translation
think
and different. Yeah,
so
translation in different languages is a crazy, crazy thing.
I just don't think it's true that the Romans would have decided to crucify Jesus just based upon what the Sanhedrin said, especially as they were having to send more and more troops there to suppress the religious ideas in that area, or the people in that area. And they'd already wasted some 50 years or 50 or so years or something like that, or 40 years trying to subdue the Levant anyway. So yeah, I don't see that as a credible historical fact anyway.
I had to do some research and look at the counter arguments against that, but in the Gospels it's definitely painted that way. But again,
of course, yeah, you'd expect
the Bible, just because it's in the Bible, does not, I don't treat it as a perfect historical document. I think it definitely has some historical, benefits. It does talk about real people and real situations, but it embellishes, and obviously the supernatural and history is, considered, basically, not, because it, for obvious reasons.
Yeah,
but,
that's why I mentioned the fig tree, because I think that is quite important in terms of saying, look, Jesus was arguing for insurrection against the Romans, and he was on the side of the freedom fighters more than
absolutely.
As many people were. Like, it had been difficult to suppress that area. The Romans had been struggling. They'd already sent like maybe 2 legions there already to try and do it. They had to send a third before it finally got done. That's especially at that time in the Roman Empire's history, that wasn't an easy thing to do, right? So finding a new legion just to go and do something like that was expensive. So I just think it's unlikely that that would have been done unless it was absolutely necessary. And financially speaking, to the Roman Empire, that particular area was extremely fruitful for goods and services, or goods going back to and throughout the Roman Empire. Not quite as much as Egypt, but certainly almost.
So you lean more towards Jesus basically causing a Jewish uprising against the Romans more so than him pissing off just the Sanhedrin, and that's why you're saying he was crucified? Is that what you lean towards more?
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, not him
condition?
leading it. I don't think he led it, right?
But
I
just
think
encouraging it being a problem.
I think he was more of a rebel than the Sanhedrin
Right.
wished to be at the time, because
Right.
they just had a new legion come into the area, and like they knew that they were facing the end, and so they just probably did not want more troublemakers to start stirring up the population against the Romans when they were trying to make peace and at least get a better deal out of being in the Roman Empire, which, as I said, had many, many advantages. Right? If you were part of the Roman Empire as opposed to being under rather than being outside it by deliberate will, then there was many reasons why people in power would have wanted to stay within the Roman Empire if possible.
I'm thinking more about Jesus, whether Jesus was a good person. I have a real problem. Problem with Jesus endorsing the old laws. I have a real problem with that.
Yeah, I was thinking that when I was talking about Jesus and him talking about I came to fulfill laws. I was thinking about mentioning that actually.
It depends on how you interpret when he talks about I did not come to destroy the laws of the prophets. I came to fulfill them. Depending, some people will apologize that away and saying that fulfilling the laws doesn't mean not turning over into the new. There are a lot of different apologist ways out of like, no, Jesus did this was a new covenant. It didn't include the all, there are a lot of people who don't think now, okay, I can give this answer. If Jesus did in fact endorse owning people as property, killing homosexuals for being homosexual, all of the other terrible shit by Deuteronomy, Exodus, all of it, endorsing the Great Flood, the murder of the mass murder of the Amalekites, women, children, animals, all, then Jesus was not a good person. However, if when he's saying what he said about I did not come to abolish the laws, I came to fulfill them, if he didn't mean he was endorsing all of those old laws, then I could call Jesus a good person. So it depends for me at the end of the day how that is interpreted, or what Jesus the person, if we're assuming he existed, what he meant by that.
Yeah. Is there opinions on him meaning something different, or him meaning are there different opinions on what he meant when he said that?
Of course.
And what are they?
It's a huge, like I can pull them up right now, but there are people that soften that into say that he's just talking about
like the
laws. Yeah, the laws are part of God's plan, God's words that Jesus is here to fulfill. Not saying that like I'm here to I'm not here to abolish any of God's previous creations or what played out or laws or anything like that. I am here to fulfill the creation. Like people are going to apologize like this, right. but I'll pull up the actual apologetics here. But
I'll give you one interpretation.
Yeah.
If I think it'll be helpful. We're talking about Matthew 5:17 to 5:20.
Yeah.
And
5:17 to 5:20. I need to get my Bible.
And a couple of things in those 4 verses which are important to consider is until heaven and earth pass away,
Right.
the law will remain. It says something like that. Have heaven and earth passed away? No. So the law remains. And by the way, whenever it says law, they're referring to Mosaic law. That's what most scholarship suggests whenever it says the law in the New Testament. Another important piece of context in 17 to 20, not unless you are righteous enough to rewrite the law, something like that, like you're a prophet, then not a tittle of, not a dot, not a tittle of a letter will pass away.
Yeah.
So
we went through that part earlier, but yeah, that's
okay.
It's important to state that again.
And
definitely.
the charitable reading, when they say fulfill, means to complete. And when you complete a project and you fulfill a contract, you don't have to do that contract anymore necessarily. And that's a common thing that I hear to get away from the slavery stuff, because Jesus fulfilled it, even though heaven and earth haven't passed away. It's completed or done is the way you can. But it seems synonymous with abolish as well. So,
it's Matthew what again?
5:17 to 20.
Can I just say something?
Matthew 5:17 to 20.
Yeah. Go ahead, Robin. And remember, everyone, make sure you are muted if you're not speaking. We have some people not speaking that are unmuted. Make sure you're muted. Also, welcome if you're new to the chat here, and people on YouTube, consider joining our Discord server. We have conversations like this all the time. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about what I think is a much even more difficult question, because even less people are able to clearly articulate what wisdom is to them. So we are going to be judging Jesus. We're going to be asking the question, was Jesus wise? And I'm going to be calling on everyone tomorrow to give their wisdom assessments of Jesus based on what they think wisdom is. So yeah, Robin, go ahead.
Like, I just want to point out a thing that makes a whole lot of difference on this too. Is like a great many Christians are Trinitarians, which means in their view, Jesus is identical to the God of the Old Testament. So there is no separation of those actions from this character, because he is that God. They are identical. They are whatever, however you cannot like explain that illogical position of the 3 and 1 and all that stuff. But their view is that is God. So that means that Jesus has been around since the Garden of Eden of creation. And so he makes him responsible for, like, it makes him just as culpable for every crime, every immoral action that God orders in the Old Testament. He says that he will, force the Israelites to eat their own children, to cannibalize their own children. He drowned the entire world. He ordered the slaughter of babies and the women's wombs ripped open. He, all of these things. I mean, there's just like so many of these horrific acts that we look at and say, oh, but that was before Jesus come along. But if you're a Trinitarian, you cannot say that, because he is God.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a great point for Trinitarians. And just to add some numbers to this so people understand how many people we're talking about here. So how many people Robin is talking about. So about 50% of all Christians are members of the Catholic Church, which is Trinitarian. That's 50%. About around 12 to 13% belong to the Eastern Orthodox Church or other Orthodox churches, which are also Trinitarian. Most Protestant denominations, about 35 to 37% of Christians, are likewise Trinitarian, including Lutheranism, Anglican Communion, Methodism, Presbyterianism, and most Baptist and Pentecostalism churches, which means well over 90% of Christians belong to churches that affirm the doctrine of the Trinity. There are non-Trinitarian Christians, a relatively small minority, reject the Trinity. Examples include Jehovah's Witnesses, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, United Pentecostal Church International, and the other oneness Pentecostal groups, various smaller Unitarian Christian churches. But yes, not well over 90% of Christians belong to churches that affirm the doctrine of the Trinity. So yes, if we are to give an answer based on Jesus, who is God, to me, it's a very easy answer as a moral well-beingist that Jesus is one of the most evil characters that's ever existed.
And honestly, like real quick, if he is God and then he like did all this horrible shit and then he comes down as like a good guy, it sort of makes him even more evil because he's like playing in your face, like coming down as this moral guy to guide you, but like the whole time he's really been your fucking celestial dictator. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like drowning people.
But
so it's like it's like playing with his food type stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But what and also, you know, the inventor of child abuse and just the worst kinds of shit, right? So now for me, again, you know, when I assess based on what I believe about Jesus the person, I believe it's likely that there was a person named Jesus, and I'm imagining Jesus the person, you know, even though they believe they're God, you know, likely, and then even though they are giving these warnings of hell, you know, there's that assessment. But yes, if we want to do a even further internal critique and say, well, what about from the Trinitarian perspective? What about from the perspective that Jesus is in fact God? Take Hitler and times Hitler by, you know, 10 to the power of a Googleplex, then we have the level of evil that Jesus, by a standard of a moral well-beingist, is engaged in. That would mean Jesus is responsible for creating the potentiality for brain cancers in children. All this creating the potentiality for child sexual abuse. That's all on Jesus's shoulders. So. That's you know, that's a much easier answer for me than dealing with you know, the issue of Jesus as the man, as the person, which I think he was another human being like anyone else. And I think he, you know, as I described earlier, there's a few more people in the room. I came to the conclusion, you know, based on Jesus not endorsing the anti-well-being old laws, and I said he would be good if he wasn't trying to endorse those things like stoning homosexuals to death, all you know, the murder of the Malachites, all of that stuff. But you know, if he wasn't trying to endorse it, then I'd think he was generally a good person. But that one is a sticking point for me. But yeah, most Christians are, you know, overwhelmingly are Trinitarians, and Robin brings up a great point with regards to what a lot of Christians believe about Jesus.
Yeah, I would like to say that I'm a Catholic, so we're Trinitarians, but I don't see personally how that applies. Also, I would like to say that I don't think that it is necessarily true because I don't know how to explain it. Because you guys, I understand you guys disagree with the stuff about the Amalekites, right? And like Joshua and Kings and Chronicles and stuff like that.
Yeah. I do. I think the, you know, murdering children being ordered by God is direct evidence of God's evil. Yeah.
Okay. Well, can I refute that point?
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
Okay. So what I would say is that what you have in those books is you have an like a kind of an exaggeration, because you have people in ancient times that are writing about like war events, and then like basically every time it says like right after and then Joshua went to this city and he killed all the Amalekites, and then like 2 chapters later God warns his people not to go marry Amalekites. So it's like there's hyperbole there, like does that
So
kinda make
is it
sense?
your belief? Is it your belief that even though, thus say the Lord of hosts, now go and strike Amalek and devote to destruction all that they have. Do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey. Do you think that is your argument here today that that's just hyperbole, or do you think that that's what came from God?
I would say that is hyperbole, just because like I said earlier, you see God warning about the Amalekites, which wouldn't be at all necessary if, all of the Amalekites were dead. Furthermore, based on the writings of St. Thomas Aquinas, I don't know how familiar you are with him, but he basically writes, not even just Thomas Aquinas, but like basically every classical theist, the position is that in order for something to have caused the universe, it would have to be outside of the universe, and therefore it wouldn't be subject to everything that's in the universe, like space, time, goodness, love, knowledge, power, all of that stuff. So it would have to be a maximally great being. Does that make sense?
Well, let's not go outside the internal critique here. I think like let's try to stay on. Like, I know what you're presenting is like the most popular apologetics with regards to Amalek, and this idea of like this was Eastern war rhetoric. Many modern biblical scholars argue phrases like utterly destroy were conventionally military hyperbole. They point out that Amalekites appear later in the biblical narrative, suggesting the language may not describe complete extermination. Even on this view, however, the command itself still explicitly mentions children and infants. So even when you step out into the external critique world, there's still God allowing for the potentiality for this kind of shit to go down. And for me as a moral well-beingist, I'm not having it. This is, it's easy for me to see the evil in God, or if you're a Trinitarian, the evil in Jesus, with regards to, allowing for this potentiality to occur within the design, this grand design. What a horrible, horrible thing. And then that's like dealing with someone who's trying to apologize this away. No, that's just rhetoric. I mean, that's, when Stephen Woodford recently brought it up on our stage versus Glenn Scrivener tried to play that page as well. But I mean, I think people are really reaching if they're thinking that God has no culpability here in ordering the killing of man and women, child and infant. I can see why people would want to try and find a way that, this must have been humans just using language, in an immoral, bad way. But I mean, I think it's a serious level of cope that's going on here.
Yeah, was it hyperbole
was
it hyperbole when God ordered King Simon to slaughter I think it was a city, men, women, children, and oxen? Yet Simon didn't kill all the oxen because he wanted to bring some home to sacrifice them to God. And then when he was about to do that, God was like, "What the hell are you doing? I told you to slaughter them all." And then he rebuked Simon, and I think he punished him. Like, was that hyperbole?
I don't think that's Simon. I think that was maybe Saul or Samuel.
All right.
It was the one right before David, but still, it was a guy. Yeah. It was the thing that happened.
Yeah, let's let Calvin respond to the first issue, and then the second issue that CJ brought up.
Remind me the first issue again. Sorry, I got distracted.
Well, I mean, you don't have to respond further, but I think it's like a serious level of coping and apologetics and avoiding what is written, what's truly written in scripture, to say that, you know, this was human beings engaging in warlike rhetoric and taking the blame away from God. I mean, even if you want to say that, God is ultimately responsible, apparently, according to you and other Christians, for this design potentiality that allows for things like, you know, slaughtering of children and stuff like this. So, I mean, even if you try to apologize away this verse or this, you know, I don't think it's going to get you very far away from the obvious evil of God.
Well, I would just say that first of all, you don't really present in that response. Sorry, you don't actually present any evidence. You just say, "I feel like," which like I feel like that's just like kind of a cop out. But
evidence for what?
Evidence for that not being hyperbole. You just say, "No, I don't think it's hyperbole." So it's.
Well, I mean, I'm responding to people who are saying it's hyperbole. I'm the one reading the text as is, and then I'm reading the text as is, doing a direct interpretation of the words. It seems as though God commanded this. And that's what the words say. And then someone else is coming along and saying like, oh no, that part's just rhetoric. But this other thing in scripture where it says, thus the Lord said, oh, that wasn't rhetoric. That wasn't human beings just fucking around. It was, you know, that part was God. I think this is just apologetics and apologists doing what apologists do. And that's trying to soften the blow of barbaric, stuff that exists in the Gospels. And I understand why it's done. Makes it more it tries to put a more positive twist, and I'm not necessarily against that. Like, I see some well-being virtue in trying to do that if, you know, you find a lot of value in Christianity and you are confronted with this terrible thing and you got to try to make it work. Like, I understand that, but it doesn't mean I think it's reasonable to believe things like this. But
that's fine, but you still haven't said anything to say that
I don't have
it's
a
not
burden.
hyperbole.
I don't have a burden here. I don't think. I think
No, but
doing an honest, natural reading, like your religion asks you, calls upon you to do of scripture, not to fuck around with the text. You know, I think the Westboro Baptist Church, you know, these are Bible literalists. I think they're probably doing it correct. Like, they're not playing apologetics. They're not saying, well, I mean, given the time, we could just call this thing rhetoric because, you know, to take it literally seems pretty brutal, and I'm not sure if that's consistent with God's nature. Maybe that's some of the reasoning going on. But I mean, if we even go back to Abraham and Isaac, like, we're talking about a God that apparently is willing to test the faith, you know, with regards to whether or not you'll kill your son for me or not. Like, this is a pretty sick individual, this being. It's not, I mean, today we're talking about whether Jesus is a good person or not. I don't necessarily, like, obviously it is an issue. We're trying to talk about the person in the time as described, their behaviors. And I understand how the Trinity comes into this. And we can answer from that, but I don't want to get into necessarily today a debate on God's moral character, even though in some contexts and in many contexts it is connected. But for me, as someone who thinks Jesus was just a person like anyone else in this room, that engaged in particular kinds of actions, whether or not those actions are accurately described in the Gospels. That's one thing. But if we're to grant that they're accurately described, we can make assessments on that. You had something to say, Robin?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we can just forget about the Trinitarian. Jesus also rebuked the Pharisees for not, for allowing the people to get around the Jewish law of stoning your unruly children, I guess at that time that some of the parents were not obeying that law, that they were supposed to take their unruly children out and take them to the gates and stone them. And Jesus specifically rebukes the Pharisees for allowing the people to get around this law. So that's something that we can attribute directly to something that Jesus supposedly said. So.
Can I get a verse on that, please? I don't.
I can
No idea what you're talking about, respectfully.
Yeah, I've never heard.
I just interject. There is evidence within the text of this story of the Amalekites that this is meant to be taken literally. It's historically presented. It's not rhetoric. The evidence is in the text itself, because this is the prelude to why God is displeased with Saul and why he anoints David. You read the story itself out. So unless you think that David wasn't actually a king, God wasn't actually displeased with Saul. It also tells you that this happened as a direct result, this Amalekite thing, a direct result of what these Amalekites had done to God's children with Moses in the Exodus story. So you're going to say the Exodus story now didn't happen as well. I mean, you're just taking on so much baggage by trying to hand wave this away.
That's not true, because I would say
my example was
hang
this
on.
story.
Hang on. Let's let our friend here. Sorry, I can't see that because I'm in streamer mode. Calvin, respond. Go ahead, Calvin.
Yeah, it's 1 Samuel, by the way. Or just the beginning of Samuel is where the story happens.
Go ahead, Calvin, please. Yeah.
Thank you. I would just say that the evidence is in the text, and it just says that, like I said earlier, you have to read it not only in the context within the text, which you are doing to your credit, but you have to read it within the context of the time frame at which the text takes place. So you can't just rip it out of that cultural context. And in that culture, it was extremely popular to write a narrative like that, where everything was, it was extremely out there. And it wasn't like today you could have extremely accurate numbers, but back then it wasn't like that. It's like cultural, and I'm sure the response is going to be something like, oh, but then because it's it's because it's God's word, then how does it have an error? And we would just say that as Catholics, we believe that it's we call it spirit breathed, where the scripture is it's inspired by the Holy Spirit, but it's not necessarily dictated by the Holy Spirit. So does that make sense?
Yeah, you would say there's a difference between divine inspiration and actually God empowering the hand of the author, right?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Like Muslims believe that the Quran was literally God sat there and wrote to Muhammad what he was supposed to write.
I don't know. There's a lot of Muslims I know who would disagree with you on that, but I think you're overgeneralizing there. But yeah, I mean, let's get some assessments. We are, who wants to make a case that Jesus was a good guy? Just to recap where we're at. A lot of people have kind of been agreeing that with Jesus as the person, a lot of the things Jesus did was good. There were a lot of there were some serious failures as well. One of the biggest failures that just Jesus as the person, minus any of the whether or not it's true that Jesus is God or not. If Jesus did actually endorse the old laws, and that would be an interesting question to maybe Calvin or Brody to answer, whether they think Jesus actually did endorse the old laws. With regards to Exodus 21, seemingly permitting, giving rules for owning other people as property, and other things like stoning or killing homosexuals, these kinds of things. Lots of the stuff that, you know, moral well-beingists like myself are going to have a big problem with. So yeah, if Jesus didn't intend to endorse the old laws, I think Jesus was generally a good person. That's kind of a sticking point for me. But just to recap where I am from the Trinitarian perspective, if Jesus was in fact God, then he's the most evil son of a bitch that's ever existed.
I can defend Jesus.
All right.
So I agree. If Jesus and God are the same person, like, I think maybe there's a few too many bad things. But like, as Jesus the character alone, yeah, I mean, he said something about obey your master, and there's the Romans, like, what is it, 120 or whatever. He does a few bad things, but I think Thomas Jefferson was a great guy. He owned slaves. He was a horrible person to women. Was he a perfect man? No. Now, Christians might disagree with what I'm about to say. I don't think Jesus was a perfect character. I mean, but they also agree to that to a certain extent with the whole losing his temper in the temple against the Jews thing. So, I think he was what's the exact wording? Was he a good person? Is that the question?
Yeah. Was Jesus a good person based on your own moral standards of goodness?
I would say he's a good person, and my caveat for all these things of like, well, he said follow the law, the old law. He said, do this with slaves. I think the thing is that he was coming at it from a legalistic standpoint of like, yes, you need to follow the law because that's God's law. And I think if he was a real person, he actually like was a real believer in the God's law. I mean, he's just trying to stay. He's been trying to say this is the law. This is what it is. It's kind of like when, something is illegal, like parking in a certain spot is illegal, like in a fire truck spot is illegal. I don't think it's morally wrong to park there for the most part, but it's illegal, right? It's less of an issue to park in the fire hazard than to go beat a slave because it's legal. But I think that's kind of where he's going with it. And he also did say, cast whoever hasn't sinned, cast the first stone and stuff like that. So,
Right.
I think that from the heart, from the spirit, Jesus was a good person and arguably a good person to look up to and try to match. But that doesn't mean he's perfect, and no one's perfect.
On that, CJ, one of the most important things today that I've been holding, especially secular and atheist people to today, I've been holding their feet to the fire on. Please provide, articulate your moral standard for us so we know how you are measuring good here with regards to
Okay,
Jesus.
that's fine. And sorry, I just popped in because I got out of work like
That's all
an
right.
hour ago. But personally for me, a person who's doing good by others is generally a person that's not interceding in the agency of others.
Okay.
And also on top of that, like that's the bare minimum. The extra on top of that is helping community around you, building up the community around you. Immediate, more importantly, but also ideally from a larger idea, your state and nation, and even the world.
And helping by what standard? Like what is the standard? What is the metric that you're going to measure at the end of the day? Like some tyrannical government might be like, yeah, we're helping you. And then people are being chained up by the neck and like building pyramids and shit.
A tyrannical government would run directly counter to the primary thing, which is, not interceding in people's agency. However, I would say things like creating happier, healthier, wealthier families.
Okay.
Wealthier only works to a certain extent, but like a base level of, happiness.
Okay. You said happiness and health. Okay.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
it's kind of hard to quantify these things, but yeah.
No, that's great. We have a metric. And look, me as a moral well-beingist, I'm out to maximize physical, mental, and social health for myself and those around me. That's, I understand your metrics. Thank you for giving them. Now, Brody, what are your thoughts today about the question? Was Jesus person. And the question is, was Jesus a good person? When you think about Jesus the person, do you think about that as well? Do you think about that in the same light as Jesus as God?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that Jesus was good as a god, but bad as a person. I mean, he was good in the strongest possible sense. He was the only human that you can say is fully righteous. He lived a perfect life without moral defect. He was sinless. Colossians says he's the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. He's the radiance of the glory of God, the exact imprint of his nature. So by the Christian definition of good, doesn't get any better than Jesus.
But what about like things like promoting family division? Like, I came not to bring peace. I came not to bring peace, but a sword. Whoever loves father or mother more than me. You think that's goodness?
Well, let's keep in mind the standard I put forth, right? I mean, maybe under your moral well-being standard.
No, I'm just asking your standard. Don't worry about me. I'm just asking you questions to see how you would qualify that.
Yeah, Jesus is perfectly good. Absolutely.
What about thought crime? Jesus expands sin to include internal thoughts being crimes.
Yeah, Jesus gets to the heart of the law, right? People were hypocrites in following the letter of the law, but internally they were wicked, and Jesus called them out on that.
But thoughts happen to us. We're not wizards at the top of a hill manifesting and creating from scratch our own thoughts.
I disagree.
Well, okay, then you disagree with cognitive science. I would assume that Jesus would understand cognitive science.
How do you think your thought before you think it? Like, what do you mean?
No, that's not what I'm claiming. I think that we have free will. We have the ability to choose what we focus and dwell on and what we pass over and ignore. And we're also responsible for our thought life, not just our motivations, things like that, not just our physical actions. I think this is kind of an all or nothing thing. I don't think you can say that you're responsible for anything if you don't have any responsibility over your thoughts.
Brody, I wanted to say though.
Go ahead, Robin.
Yeah. Whatever you just said about all of that, Jesus was all of this light or whatever all that's things you said. Like, none of that addresses the problematic parts that we're speaking out about Jesus. Like, that's why I get so aggravated with apologetics, because you say Jesus was the light, he was the truth, he was the love, and whatever you said, and none of it addressed the things that we were talking about. How, if you're a Trinitarian, that Jesus was responsible for all of these other immoral acts that are in the and it doesn't make any of that, and like nothing you said made any sense as far as this argument that we've been making against Jesus. And so, would you please address the issues that we gave out?
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to address all of them. We'd probably have to go one by one. But I will say, Robin, a lot of these critiques I'm hearing is importing a foreign standard upon Jesus that the Christian does not accept. So I'm fine with saying Jesus does not meet your standard. I just think your standard is wrong.
Well, I know, but like we are humans, and we are the only people that are actually here to have a standard, because God's standard is like at best interpreted by people who seem to have like motivated reasoning for it to be that way, because it almost always seems like that God's standard and their standard are like somehow aligned up really well. Like if you get a Christian and you hook him up to some monitors and you ask him if this is God's idea, him and God always have the same thoughts.
Well, Robin, your standard lines up pretty well with your interests, wouldn't you say?
My standard lines up with human interest, like
Right, but just because human interest aligns with your personal
Well, I
interest, I
mean-
wouldn't say that means that I shouldn't listen to it. So just because my interest lines up with God's interest doesn't mean you shouldn't
Well, I
listen
mean,
to
then
it.
you should explain. You should need to. That Christians should need to explain why that we should follow a God that is less moral than we are. Why should I follow a God and believe in a God who is less moral than I am? Who is?
Yeah, he's only less moral if you're importing a foreign standard and that you're judging him by something that we wouldn't judge him by.
Standard. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, I mean-
foreign meaning like it's not from my worldview. You're importing your own worldview onto my
But
God.
you don't have your own world. Like if Christians had their own world, then they could do that. If they
I'm not
lived
saying I
in
have my own
their
world.
own world, then they would be justified in having their own worldview on morality. But they don't live. They're not the only people in this world.
I think everybody is able to have their own worldview, right? We all share a world, but we all see it differently. So we both are living and experiencing the world around us, and you have a view of how the world works, I have a view of how the world works, and we talk about it. I'm not saying I have a different world than you.
But I mean, just instead of saying that my system, doesn't have any, like it's a bad system to judge God. Explain God's actions.
I'm saying you're expecting me to justify God's actions in a way that would appease your system, and I'm saying you haven't. Like, I have no reason to follow your system or to make Jesus conform to your system. I don't see any purpose in doing that.
What about your own?
Can I?
What
hold
about
on,
your
can
own
I
system?
say? Can I say this?
One sec, Zemo. One sec, Zemo. I'm.
Oh,
It's
I
gonna
think
be.
it would help.
Just one sec. Please mute. It's going to be Robin finishing with Brody, and then we're going to Brett because Brett's been waiting to get in. So we do have a bit of a order here. I have in my mind.
What about your
okay.
own system? What about your own system, Brody? Would you say that ordering the men, like hunt, military men to go into a town and just pick up babies and smash them into the rocks and to run swords through them and to cut open the wombs of pregnant women, or rape the wives of a king, as punishment for his crime, or drown the entire world. Would you say that is moral under your system?
So not all of those things that you mentioned are commanded by
ordered
God.
every
So I'm
one of
not
them.
gonna.
Yeah, he ordered
no,
every one of them.
like for example, the one like you mentioned, one of David's psalms, right, where he talks about smashing the heads of babies on rocks and stuff like that, which is like a cry of anger out of David, right? So I'm trying to give some nuance a little bit, but I'm fine with saying that under my worldview and the worldview of Scripture, God does not wrong people by taking away the gift of life that He's given them. None of us have a right to life. This is something that you guys have imported into the text, that we have a right and a claim to our own lives. As a Christian, I believe that God is the one who gives us life, and He can take it away, and He doesn't wrong us by doing that.
Brody,
Bruh.
I hate that you admitted that in front of her, but
I know you guys disagree. That's fine. I mean, that's what this call's all
you
about, right?
You really should think about that kind of answer.
Well,
okay.
Let's. I want to move on to something a little different, and then we're going to get Brett. But just a quick answer, if you could, Brody. Do you believe that Jesus endorsed Old Testament authority?
Yes, he was a rabbi. He taught that the Old Testament had authority, but that is the Old Covenant. Jesus came to establish a new covenant. So up until his death, yeah.
Okay, so like rules of slave ownership, Exodus 21, or generally in Exodus, would you think that Jesus, when I came to fulfill the laws, was referencing those kinds of laws, or laws about stoning homosexuals?
So when he says I came to fulfill the laws, it doesn't make too much sense to then import Levitical priesthood laws into that statement.
Okay.
But he does say that the law and the prophets, which is basically the Tanakh, right? It's the Torah, the writings, the prophets, they all speak of him. They all point to him, is basically Jesus' claim, which is a big claim. And it takes, people have devoted their entire life to studying what that means in a way that I probably couldn't give a quick answer to right now. But yeah, he definitely believed that they were authoritative. They weren't just opinion.
Okay. Interesting. Brett, you're up there, brother. We cannot hear you. I see your face moving. Your lips are juicy.
Try it one more
but
time.
yeah.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah. Here we go. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've been having internet issues. Just let me know.
Yeah.
Brody, this is not really a question. This is a comment, but I'm going to try to keep it concise to respect other people's time as well. I want to reiterate what Robin was saying a minute ago. Human beings claim that they are speaking for a deity or that they have the text of the deity. I know, I have a good feeling, a good bet, would say that Muslims claiming that are wrong. What we're trying to articulate in this scenario here is that it's one thing for a person to believe that their religion is correct, but then to at times certain arguments not being engaged with, it is just human beings going back and forth about what religion, what deity, Yahweh, Allah, whoever it might be. It is just human beings going about making these claims back and forth to one another. And that one of the dangers with this that we see in the modern day and for the past couple thousand years, not just with monotheistic religions, but others as well, is that people are willing to kill one another over this. And I find it very problematic as a historian, like we were talking about in the chat there, because I find it one thing for a person to say, I believe that sin is real and that I really want to try to make my life better for it. And I think that salvation through Jesus Christ could do that. If an individual person wants to believe that, even though I don't know it's the soundest of reasoning, I would say, yeah, that's your right to do it, for sure. But humans don't stop there. They are very tribalistic in the sense that if they sense a threat from other groups, they don't just say, oh, the other religion can go live there as they want to. They often create warfare, as we still see today. So that's where I don't know if it relates back too much to what Robin was saying earlier, but that's a problem I have with the fundamental claim that a person makes to say one is correct, and that in turn a person argues, I am speaking for a deity. I am speaking the words of the deity, or I am speaking from a person who is, God in the flesh. That to me is very problematic. Now, I don't know if you want to take 30 seconds because I want to respect Trav's time and going over to other people that wanted to talk there, but I just don't. I don't see how a person can honestly read through history and not see that human beings are doing this to each other routinely, and no one's exempt from it. People use religion in this regard to say that they have the ultimate truth, and then they use power over one another. Sorry, that was a lot. I'll stop there. But
yeah,
I find it very problematic. People are killing one another to this day over it.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I find it very problematic whenever people try to spread a belief by the sword, or they try to. I just think there's no chance in converting anybody that way, if that's your goal. I'm pretty much a pacifist, and unless it comes to self-defense. So yeah, I think a lot of people have done really terrible things in the name of religion. I'm coming at this from, I believe, the same perspective as many people on here, which is, if the question is not have Christians done bad in the name of Jesus, but was Jesus a good person, which I believe the question is. It sounds like all of you are using your moral systems that you believe are true and judging Jesus based on your moral system. So I came here, I pulled out my moral system and judged him to be good, and that's the best I can do.
Yeah, I mean, and this is why it's important. For those of you who are in the room right now, or those of you who come to this stream eventually, it is of the utmost importance you learn how to articulate and put your fucking moral stake in the ground and engage in the war of ideas in a way that you can fully articulate what you are basing your critiques on and why they are better than what Brody here is arguing. It's really important that you bring those goods to the table, because you can appeal to Brody's emotions all day long here about what's going on in the world, the things you don't like, but you have to bring something to the table. It's not enough, and I'm not saying anyone is doing this, but it's a real problem I see in atheism and secularism, that secular and people and atheists, they bring a buttload of critiques against the Christians to the table, and there's a serious lack of articulation of good discernible moral systems to replace. And I can easily give you my moral sermon that I give time and time again about moral well-beingism, that the good life is grounded in maximizing well-being for yourself and those around you, and that well-being is grounded in physical, mental, and social health. The reason why I know that is because it's born of my gut sentiments. The same way that Christians come to love Jesus and to love God and to love the Bible sentimentally from their gut is the same way I come to my moral prescriptions. That's what I think is going on here. So it's not enough to come here and try to point out problems without providing your own prescriptions, your own system, to actually engage in the war of ideas. Like I'm crying out and demanding more of the secularists, of the moral subjectivists, of the atheists, to actually take time to learn to articulate your moral systems down to the bloody metric you are using to measure good, bad, right, and wrong in the world. And hopefully these moral metrics you are using, you care about enough to throw your stake in the ground and to say, no, this is why I disagree with you, and this is why my moral system's better. This is why my system is better than what God's system has given you. Whatever your arguments may be, but I don't think it's enough to simply appeal to some of the problems you see with Christianity. Get your system together and bring your system into the war of ideas.
You're so right, Travis. You're so right. I do want to say one thing. You're right 100%, but it's really freaking annoying to me when, I'm told over and over and over again, oh, you're stealing your morality from Christianity. Oh, you're stealing your morality from the Bible. Oh, you're stealing your morality from us. But then as soon as I say something that isn't anything like theirs, it's, oh, well, you're making your own stuff up. And that doesn't count because I made my own stuff up.
Yeah.
And I don't have to do anything or consider any other perspectives. And I'm not trying to be mean, but
it happens to me all the time where people say, Travis, you're walking in Jesus's footsteps. You realize that, right? And I'm like, no, I make no appeal to Jesus. I didn't grow up Christian. I didn't grow up learning Jesus. The only reason why I've learned of Jesus is because I find it valuable to critique Jesus, to show that Jesus was not infallible, to show that Jesus was not God. Because I think a lot of people are under that false interpretation. So I find it epistemically valuable. I don't do that, by the way, to try and lessen the well-being of the Christian. It's an epistemic gripe I have. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I want the Christian to be maximizing well-being for themselves and those around them as well. And I think many Christians do that. But if there are Christians out there like the Westboro Baptist Church who are Bible literalists, who they claim to be, and it seems to be the case that they follow the word, by simply doing a natural reading and literally interpreting the word. But if they're out there, saying that, praise God for dead homosexuals and things like this, and picketing their funerals, I think that is evidence. Sorry, someone needs to be unmuted. Sorry, I got tagged there. But that is where I want to bring my war of ideas to people who are causing detriments to other people's well-being, to other people's physical, mental, and social health. But let this be a critique that's not falling on deaf ears, that atheists and secularists who sit around saying, oh yeah, I follow the golden rule, that's my moral system, I can poke holes in that all fucking day long. You haven't done shit. You have done nothing. You need to start spending a lot more time at promoting good moral systems that you are willing to defend in the war of ideas. And you and I, at the end of the day, might disagree, but we need to get over this era where atheists and secularists are just going around fucking poking holes and critiquing other moral systems and not focusing on building their own discernible, articulable moral systems that really do give you this feeling of goodness when you promote them in the world. And a lot of people are just throwing around secular humanism. They'll be like, well, I'm a secular humanist. Okay, tell me how that works in practice. And I ask basic moral questions, good, bad, right, wrong, and I can't get any articulation out of it. Or we ask a question like, is Jesus a good guy? And then it's all of a sudden, it's just like, all we can get is descriptions out of people. Like, I'm very frustrated about this issue that I see. And some people out there who think, oh, this is the top atheist I like to follow, and all they fucking do is shit on other moral systems, and I'm not hearing them put a discernible, articulable moral system out there and giving good answers. It's low resolution philosophy, and it needs to be updated.
Travis, I just want to point out that the assignment of this stream was to decide if we thought Jesus was a moral person. And Travis told us to use our own moral system to do that. So,
yes.
So Brody, when you accuse me of doing that, I'm doing what the assignment for the stream was. Like, and it's not like the assignment of this stream was not to present my moral system to you and try to convince you of it. It was to judge Jesus based on my moral system. That's what Travis asked us to do.
Yeah, I'm missing context here. Are you guys referencing like text chat or something? Because I'm missing context, Robin.
No, but I mean, like, because Brody said that I was using my own system to judge Jesus, and that's what.
Yeah.
We were supposed to
and he's responding and critiquing your system. But Robin, did you articulate your system? Because you said all of these things that are bad about.
Because, I mean, I thought that. Yeah, I know I didn't. I mean, we can, but I didn't know that we wanted to go on to that kind of stuff.
Of course, Robin. Of course, like that is today. It's not enough for us to just sit here and I'm not picking on you. I'm just saying this as just an issue I see, is that a lot of atheists and secularists out there think that it's enough, like they're doing something morally serious by going into a room and attacking God or attacking Jesus, and they're not giving their own standard by which they're attacking it from. For the love of Christ on a cracker, please, Robin, give us your standard.
Oh yeah, well, I can, but I mean, I was just trying to stay on.
It's the most important. Look, it's the most important thing to me, is that you provide your standard to the room. Hopefully that will help other people who don't have a discernible standard and they're kind of in no man's land to have something for themselves. So please, I would way rather spend time on that than us poking out for the 10 billionth time in the history of humanity what's wrong with Yahweh, who is, to me, is clearly evil, but it's more important. The exercise is more important for us to hear how you are discerning good, bad, right, and wrong when it comes to judging Jesus.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm a humanist, and so I think I place human beings above all the feelings of gods and all that, and I don't think that. So I place that humanist positions. I don't know if most Christians, I think, are somewhat aware of that, and so like ordering the slaughter of babies and pregnant women and drowning people and none of that fits in my moral system of humanism.
I actually think it's humans that are evil.
One sec. Please mute.
I have a
Big
moral
Yahoo. It's not
system.
you guys, it's not your turn. Robin is speaking. I'm going to go back and forth with Robin for a bit here. Okay, Robin, you said you're you said you're a humanist, and let's play with that a little bit. How do you what? Zemo, please don't interrupt.
I was talking to somebody else, man.
I know.
Go ahead.
You unmuted, and then you said that into the mic in the middle of the show.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I did it by mistake. I'm sorry. That's what I said. Go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. So Robin, you're saying that because when you say you're a humanist, like, what is the metric? Like, what is good for human health outcomes, or simply is it a simple consequentialist, like, every time a human dies, that's a bad thing and a wrongful thing? Or are there good deaths, or are there righteous deaths? Like, so when God enacts onto the Amalekites, what is bad about that, and why?
Well, I mean, first of all, I don't say sin exists. So, I guess what was it? What do y'all call you? I don't know. Like,
we don't have to put a label. We don't have to put a label on it. We don't have to say utilitarianism. We don't have to say consequentialism. Okay. We can. I want. The most important thing we can do today is to understand the calculus you are engaging in when you hear something like God ordered slaughter on the Amalekites. Why is that a bad thing or a wrongful thing fundamentally to you?
Like causing harm to other human beings, like you said, harming their health, their mental, their livelihood.
Yep.
Causing harm, to me is bad. I mean, it is immoral to intentionally inflict harm upon people, especially innocent. Like another, like, and I don't even want to get into the justice that they claim that God holds.
Okay, yeah, but let's focus. Let's stay focused. So you're saying, and this is good stuff. You're saying harm, causing harm to human beings is bad. Yes. Are there cases where that can be good?
I mean, sometimes it comes down to we have to cause harm. Like, we have to give our children vaccines. Yep. Like, it harms it causes harm when we.
So that would be a righteous harm, you would say, maybe?
That is a harm that is a necessary harm. That is righteous, yes.
Okay.
That is something that I think that, you have to weigh what it is. But just in the Bible, even God admits to punishing innocent people for the crimes of their parents or the generations before them. Yeah. And then that is not just.
Right. So you're saying punishing innocent people is a bad thing because of the effects it has on their health, their
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good.
And then this is treating women like they're less human than men, or they're less valuable. I mean, all throughout the Bible, the God lets you know that a woman is worth about half of what a
Yeah.
man is.
And the reason and the important part there, okay, you just made the proclamation, you know, the descriptive nature of God's wrath. And then you would say that is bad to do that to women because
Yeah, because it teaches us, like seeing that.
because
like,
of the effect on their health, right? The women, like looking at the incident. Okay. And what I'm trying to do is just get away from the habit of describing more things, but getting down to the prescription. So you're saying I'm putting my flag in the ground because God is causing harm to women by degrading them in this way. And it's bad because it has a negative effect on their health. Because people
it had a negative effect on like our daughter's health,
Yeah,
and our mother's
yep,
health.
yes.
Like it's a continued like cycle of these women who make like all these apologetics for this kind of behavior, and they think that they have to slink it home and take beatings from their husbands and
Right.
and not speak in church, and they're not, you know what I mean, they're not the head of the household. I mean, they don't even, like right now there's, you know, they don't even want women to, some of them don't even want, they want to take away our right to vote because they think the man should do all the voting for the house, you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
because that's what God's supposed to be. And
All of this stuff
like,
is like a violation of autonomy, which I think is very important to one's physical, mental, and social health. People want to feel autonomous. They want to feel like, you know, they have to give consent. Let's say consent is very important for physical, mental, and social health. You know, and they also, people want to feel valuable. That's, you know, when all of a sudden you're born and it's like automatically you are less valuable than another person. I would say that the thing you care about is the effect that has, the consequences of that playing out on the moral agent, the human being, and how that affects them. It causes a detriment. And then the question is, what is that causing a detriment to? I articulate that as well-being, physical, mental, and social health. The reason why we're going through these steps is that too often the most important thing, referencing how this system functions, these metrics, and even getting down to fundamentally why these metrics matter, because a Christian is going to push you on that, being like, oh, well, you put your stake in the ground for human health. Who the hell is to say that that's important? Well, the same way you came to find that Jesus was important, or that the Bible was important, your sentimentality, your emotivism is the same thing I'm having to deal with here too. Mine's leading me to this system. So really, fundamentally, there is nothing better about what your emotions are leading you to compared to what my emotions are leading to, not at a fundamental basis. Then we are arguing about, you know, why it's important to have a system grounded in, you know, creating, you know, positive outcomes for health versus a system that's seemingly riddled with all kinds of anti-well-being behavior by, you know, a God on high. So then you can start actually measuring. But if you don't bring your metrics, if you don't bring your fundamental grounding to the conversations, this isn't just to you, Robin, it's to everyone, then I would say you're not doing anything, like besides offering some critiques that you have, that there's no rationale to those critiques if we're not articulating what that is clearly. So yeah.
Yes, and like, okay, another thing with women, and in there it teaches that if, like, on their wedding night, that if, you know, if the woman doesn't bleed, that they can take the woman, they can take her to the gates of the city and stone her to death. You know what I mean? Because she wasn't a virgin. But do you know how many, like, we know now through science how many women actually really do bleed the first time they have sex? It's a very small number.
Right.
Like, you know, I mean, there is no, that is not any kind of metric that you can measure virginity with. So how many innocent women were actually stoned under this rule. That, because it wasn't even a rule that is actually good for what they were trying to figure out with it. And a God would have known that. A God would have said, oh, you can't do that. You can't judge it by that, because that doesn't always work.
Yeah. And look, that's, you're pointing out incoherence you see in these belief systems, and I think, like, yeah, they're completely valid, and I just think, like, it's important for us to reference the metrics by and standards by which we are judging these and in this case it might be an epistemic issue. And again, if we have an epistemic gripe, a knowledge gripe with something the Christian is saying, for example, name your damn standards. Based on my standards of correspondence criteria of truth being made primary in my epistemological standards, needing demonstration, typically evidence, and needing to believe the proposition, I find this is where X is failing. And learning to articulate our ethical standards and epistemic standards are of the utmost importance, and people need to start spending way more time in study and in learning to articulate these things.
Thank you, Travis. I think Objective Ethics had wanted to say something for a while. So
Yeah.
I'll dry up with him.
Yeah, go ahead.
I appreciate you guys letting me jump in. Here's my first. I'm really new to the group, and I don't want to step on toes or whatever.
Hey,
but I do have a
welcome
few
in.
thoughts. For one thing, I'm a moral realist, and I have absolutely no problem discussing my views on objective morality from a secular position. But before I even get into that, if anybody even cares, I'd just like to point out a few things that have ground that's already been gone over to kind of just comment. First of all, Robin brought up 10-15 minutes ago a story about Jesus condemning the Pharisees for their hypocrisy and not being willing to follow through with the Mosaic law and stoning their disobedient children to death. And somebody asked for a citation for that. That comes from Mark chapter 7, verses 8-13. If you have a reference Bible, you'll get a reference to which law Jesus was specifically citing, which is the law to put disobedient children to death. And you'll find that in Leviticus chapter 20, verse 8. As far as the claim that Christian worldview, the Catholic worldview, everything that God does is good because that's how we define goodness, that's completely vacuous because it's entirely circular. It offers nothing to the moral discussion whatsoever. If you're going to simply say that everything God does is good, then you cannot even question that reasoning because it becomes circular. How do you know it's good? Oh, because everything God does is good. Well, how do you know it's actually good? Well, because God is good. So on, and it just goes around and around.
Yeah.
And around.
Then on that issue, you basically have to retreat to external critique as opposed to trying to do this kind of eternal critiquing. If a Christian really is digging their heels in on that issue, it's like, no, it's just de facto anything God says good. You really have to step outside that internal critique if you really want to have a moral discussion and try to critique that notion from the outside looking in, because if you try to do it from the inside looking in, then they're just going to keep retreating back to God good. So
it's epistemically vacuous because it's entirely circular. You must step outside of it at some point to break the cycle. The other issue that I come across is that Christians say, well, God can take all this life because God gives life. No Christian would say it's okay for a biological mother and a biological father to take a child's life, even though we know fundamentally, scientifically, it's demonstrable that child would not be here without the biological mother and father. They don't even want abortion, much less a child that's been born to have their life taken by the mother and father. So this whole giving life gives you the right to take life is, again, completely vacuous. It means nothing. Now, if you guys want to get into moral realism discussions, I'm more than happy to do that, but I'll turn the floor over to you guys. I just want to kind of highlight a couple of those points.
Yeah, thanks, Objective Ethics, and thanks for being so concise. And we won't talk about objective morals or things today. We've done a lot on that recently, but do keep an eye on our streams because we often do talk about that issue. But today we are asking the question, was Jesus a good person? That is the question we are examining today. For everyone in the room, please make sure you have the live stream running on mute. It just helps the algorithm out. Don, do you have a way of approaching the question today?
Was Jesus a good person?
Was Jesus a good person?
If I take like the Christian perspective, then Jesus was God. So to ask, is God a good person? It's a very weird thing to even ask to begin with. But I'm just going to take the historical one. I'm mostly sure that the historical Jesus was probably a good person. I don't see him as an evil man. I don't see him as someone who wants to harm human beings. I think our intention to do good in the world is something that I judge people's morals by. What do you intend to do? How do you navigate your life? What are the things you're trying to do? Do I have an issue with Christian ethics? As a whole, I do, especially the one of like God is the source of morals. I think the source of morals when you should be understood as our interaction with society, how we run our day-to-day lives, how we treat the people close to us, how we treat our society at large. I think those are the most important things to judge someone by. So like turn the other cheek, blessed are the meek. These are things I surprisingly disagree with. I think that people who have the ability to do good and to use power and don't because they have to be meek, I don't think it's a good idea. I think you should exercise your ability to do good in the world. I don't think that turning the other cheek is also a good idea, and many times it's important to stop those who harm other peoples in society. And I think those type of Christian ethics of like leave unto Caesar's what is unto Caesar, unto God what is unto God, I don't like those ideas. I think those are poor ideas. But I think Judas generally was a good person.
Fantastic. And if Jesus and we'll go to you, Big Yahoo. We're trying to move the mic around. So Don and if Jesus, like the Trinitarian view, 90% of Christians are going to believe that Jesus is God. And if Jesus was God, would that change your opinion?
Was he a good person? I mean, if you start going down the God route, it gets super complicated and super confusing because on the one hand, Jesus's actions are very not in line with like the God of the Old Testament. The God of the Old Testament is like a national God who sits subordinate above his population to enact some sort of like cosmic spreading of his message and his truth and his some stuff like that. And Jesus just doesn't play that role. He's not a nation's God. He's like this other figure that like says things like, I don't know, it's harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven than for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. And to me, that's not something that a God would like even care about. That's not what are you basically saying? I mean, it's obviously was like revolutionary against the rich at the time. So there's a lot of issues there. So like the question would be like, anthropomorphized, is God a good person? I would say no. Anthropomorphized, God would be a very selfish, self-interested person who's okay with wiping out large swaths of people to give his chosen few dominion over an area. So no.
Okay, cool. Awesome. I'm just going to move the mic around and get as many opinions as we can for a bit here. We are getting close to the end, but tomorrow, everyone, please do join us because we're going to be asking a more difficult question. I think it's going to be much more difficult for people to even articulate tomorrow's question than it is for today's question. But tomorrow we're going to ask, was Jesus wise? So we're going to talk about wisdom tomorrow. So please try to, throughout the day tomorrow, try to think about what wisdom means to you. What do you think is wise posturing? We're going to get into a lot of that tomorrow. So maybe wisdom is something you haven't thought of as much as morality, good, bad, right, and wrong. So try to think throughout your day about wisdom. Big Yahoo, go ahead.
Yeah, listen. You said that the God of the Bible, at least you said you think at least that the God of the Bible is evil, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is that I'm not. Yeah. So I'm not confident that you would be over here today talking about maximizing what is the mutual well-being. Is that how the usual phrase goes?
Yeah, well-being for myself and those around me. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we'll call it mutual well-being, right? I'm not confident that I would be hearing this from you today if it wasn't for the God of the Bible. That is, not about him existing or not existing, but about the actual text existing and the role that it played historically. I mean, after all, the reason why you know about the guy and the reason why, he actually plays a big role in your life, right? At least, culturally or whatever, it's because of, the spread of Christianity that at one point got to your ancestors who were before pagan and who were living, God knows how and who knows how much they were concerned about maximizing mutual well-being. And
yeah, I mean,
one second. Can I finish? Right?
Finish. Yeah.
So you got to consider, right, biblical characters that are held up high, who actually don't just think about maximizing mutual well-being, but in fact go a step beyond there. Like Moses comes to mind, right? Who risks, his position in Pharaoh's house in order to save a fellow Hebrew.
Yeah, that's
forth,
well-being.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, but it doesn't even maximize mutual well-being in this case, right?
Yeah,
it's actually, in fact, Mac, wait, 1 second. I'm almost done, right? So you have this, and when it comes to self-sacrifice, I guess in Christianity, Jesus is a trivial example, right? Pretty direct. And should you bring up, all these things that you find negative, right, that I mentioned in Leviticus and so forth, and things that seem oppressive, I think it's, it might not be a coincidence that the people who these laws were given to today believe, right, or as far as, for as long as we can remember, in fact, believe that there are layers of red tape before executing these laws. And when it comes to Christians, they have this idea that, Jesus came along and undid with those laws. So I wouldn't, just hand wave that and just quickly overlook it.
Yeah, I don't understand a lot of your argumentation here. You also presuppose that like God is a big part of my life. My moral well-being is
what are we talking about here?
My moral quest. It has no appeal to gods. I've never been a religious person. I didn't grow up that way. My interest in critiquing religiosity comes from my desire to want to help people find more healthy ways of dealing with their faith if they're going to remain in the faith, or to give people alternatives if they feel like they have to kind of act like a Christian because they don't realize that there are other ways of being a good, righteous person in the world. That's another reason why I engage in this kind of topic. But you also presuppose that like the thing I think that is most evil, or the reason why I call God evil, has something to do with the Bible. It's not really that. It's that if in fact God is the creator of reality, God is responsible for all of the potentiality baked into reality. And that would include the potentiality for children to be sexually abused. And any kind of creator that would create a creation that has that potentiality baked into it is just right off the bat, based on my moral assessment, is just purely evil. And if someone's like, well, I mean, if you want to give human beings free will, how would you deal with the child? I could create a physics where as soon as you were about to abuse a child, you are frozen in place and a giant beam of light shoots from the top of your head, signaling to the authorities where to come and pick you up. What I just outlined is a far more good and righteous design than the evil one that exists here today. Now, of course, I don't believe that there are any gods. In fact, I know that there are no gods, and I know that gods are man-made based on my epistemic standards. correspondence criteria of truth being made primary, and coherence criteria of truth secondary. And so when I say the character of God is evil, it has to do with that whole potentiality spectrum that God has allowed for in his creation. And I don't give a shit about what the excuses are for why people think that potentiality for child abuse and grape and beheadings and murder and all of this stuff. I don't give a shit how people are going to apologize that away or try and soften that up. The fact is that if you do believe in an all-powerful God that made this creation, they also created the potentiality for that stuff, and brain cancer in children, leukemia. It's just like, that is a purely evil design by a purely evil creator, in my opinion. So Big Yahoo, I don't think you nailed the mark there.
Yeah,
I don't know. What can I answer?
Look, wait a minute though. But we hear this so much from Christians. It's like that the whole world borrowed their morality. That they're the reasons why we have any morals right now. We've had Christianity, so we have no idea actually what the world would be like if it hadn't been here. We might be flying around, the galaxies by now. There's no way that we can assess whether, and what Travis did on when he did his thing, punched it into his system, it came out as just slightly negative, right, Travis? I think.
Yeah,
overall,
I think overall, based on the tests I've ran, based on my moral system, Christianity has been a net negative for humanity. That isn't to say there aren't great things that have come out of Christianity with regards to human flourishing by the standard of well-being. There's so much coercion. There's so much bullying into the faith by way of threat of hell. These kinds of anxieties and all kinds of different things that are just completely unnecessary with regards to the human experience, the way I see it. So and again, it's not wise to just view Christianity through a negative utilitarian lens, a suffering avoidance lens. There's also a lot of positive things that Christians do in the name of Christianity. The charity, the overwhelming amount of charity, even if there's some would argue that some of that is coerced because people are trying to get into heaven. Regardless, the charity itself is producing fantastic things with regards to human well-being, physical, mental, and social health around the world. So let's not be quick to just because Christianity may have been a net negative with regards to human flourishing by way of well-being. Let's not just view Christianity and Christians through a negative lens. There's a lot of positivity there, and that's important to celebrate as well.
Yes, but I hear that a lot when I talk to Christians, is that that everything about, they think that Western civilization, is so much on a higher scale than every other civilization. And then
not all Christians.
But that's not what I was. But also that's not what I was saying, Robin. I wasn't saying that Christians, because right after I said something positive, you jumped in with but.
I know what I was addressing. What Big Yahoo said.
Oh, okay. I thought
Big Yahoo never got to fully respond to what he wanted to say to anyhow. So, sorry.
Yeah, Big Yahoo didn't respond to me yet, but Finish Robin, and then we'll go on to Big Yahoo. You were pointing out something.
I mean, I just like that was what I was responding to originally, was the fact that it was like that we owed all of this to Christianity, that we wouldn't be here without Christianity. And like I'm not saying that Christianity's never done good things, or that there are no Christians who do good things. That's absolutely not true.
Yeah,
there are lots of Christians who have done good things, and I think that most of them have done it in spite of their religion and not because of it, though. Is my view on that.
I mean, most human beings most human beings that have lived on this planet never had Christianity. So, and there was a lot of high levels of flourishing, and there are a lot of high levels of flourishing now in the world today, despite Christian teachings and theology. So, I think there's an overwhelming amount of empirical evidence to show that human beings, didn't need Christianity. There are particular moral voids that Christianity obviously filled for many people, and continue to do that today. But it's not any. I know a lot of Christians are going to say, yeah, well, it's the word of God. It's the only word. Jesus is the only way. But I mean, the way I think about it is like, if Christianity wouldn't have been there, or let's say when the Enlightenment broke out and secular moral systems, took over even more, and let's say Christianity would have died then for the most part, some people would say like, oh, then all hell would have broke loose. I don't think so. I don't think there's good reasons to believe that. But if Big Yahoo has something else to say, go ahead.
Look, so I have 2 points, right? Point number one, maybe I guess I'm mistaking you for somebody else who, in fact, used examples from the Bible that they thought were, examples of oppression. But okay,
I can, but it's not my strongest position and argument. All of that Bible stuff weighs nothing compared to the potentiality argument I make. But.
Okay, so regarding potentiality, right? While I hear what you're saying, I'm not fully confident that it would bridge the gap all the way to you calling God a good God. And I'll tell you why, right? Yes, if God operated the way that you described, we would in fact end up observing 0 instances of child molestation, because like you said, he would just freeze them in place at whatever point in time.
There would be a physics,
and that would be pretty strong evidence, right? Because we would just see 0 instances of it. And the only way somebody could doubt he's doing that at all is by bringing up the possibility that nobody wants to commit this sin, right? But in reality, that's pretty unlikely. So once again, it's pretty good evidence, right? Where I think you will not be entirely intellectually satisfied, right, by just your standards for other things, including God's existence over here, right, and including, I guess, also his benevolence, where he truly knows what he's doing, and therefore you have no room to doubt it. Regarding the question of, we see no more instances of child molestation, but does that mean that there are no false positives? Does that mean that every single person that God has frozen in place was in fact going to do this? Or has God used this proclaimed ability and proclaimed law in order to freeze some other people in place because he wanted to freeze for some other reason that we might not agree with? This, I don't think you would be fully confident about, and therefore you wouldn't be ready to actually call him good.
Well, I mean, if it was a physics, like I outlined in my example, if it was a physics, this would be something we would be able to model and understand, right? Like the reason why people are being frozen in this state. Like even if we didn't throw them in prison, but it allowed us to intervene and help them away from this child abusive behavior. I'm saying you might say there might be false positives, and we might have to come up with technology to be like, well, you were frozen in place and it's, you know, maybe it would say in scripture or whatever that this God handed down that this is a physics I have put in place so that no child will be abused. Then the way we would treat that to deal with the issue of, well, maybe sometimes this physics goes wrong, we would then not hold people accountable for the actual crime of child abuse, but there would be an opportunity to intervene and check in with them and give them all the necessary resources, and perhaps we would engage in some kind of necessary monitoring of that household situation. Like, I think there are ways that we would be able to build systems around, making sure that children are safe, even if it was a false positive. And yeah, it would suck if someone was being victimized by this God, or this God's physics that wasn't functioning properly. But in the way I'm thinking about this, when we're thinking about like a proclaimed all-powerful God, I think he would be able to put in place a physics that worked properly. So I guess that in the scenario you're outlining, it's interesting, but I think that would be something we would be able to model around if it was a God that couldn't get his shit straight.
The idea is that it is working properly. Okay, I'll go after this question.
I think we're getting into the weeds though, guys, because like we'll let Niv go. I do want to finish off with today's question, and we are almost out of time because it is getting quite late. Niv, go ahead, and then I want to. And by the way, Niv, the question today is, was Jesus a good person? Is the question today.
A quick question I want to ask him. If you see progress because of God, because of Christianity, how could you be so sure that if Christianity didn't exist, that we would have been further along in progress than we are now?
You're asking that to Big Yahoo?
Like, why not have that measure? Why not think of that measurement as well? Why just think one-sided? You get what I'm saying? Like, why think one-sided? Like, why not ask the other question of a potential? Okay, because this existed is why we are here now. Now, what if it didn't exist? Could we have been further along?
Could, sure, right. But I didn't imply that I knew for sure we couldn't. I implied that considering, both sides of the coin, my intuitive calculus here is that overall there's a benefit.
Yeah, I mean, your intuitive calculus, like we want to see that made more concrete, right? We want to see how you're calculating benefit, like, and there would be a lot of things to consider, right? So you might have a gut feeling that there is a an overwhelming positive, but that seems like a pretty big project. Like when I ran my systems a few times with my metrics in it, I'm producing like 50-page PhD level outlines of the moral metrics at play, the measures of goodness, badness, righteousness, wrongfulness. But yeah, finish off, and then we'll move on to wrapping up here.
So, okay, so look, obviously when I'm using the word intuition here, I don't mean that from the set point that is just pure intuition. No, it's historically informed intuition. And if I make it more informed, through an AI like you're suggesting, right? I still think there's still going to be a massive gap where I can be massively confident about it, just because of not just how broad the problem is, but just how much of a soft science it comes from, and therefore how effectively impossible it'll be to come up with something we can have a sufficient, amount of confidence about. Okay. So even though you've gotten closer to this in a specific model that you work with than I have, I think that you yourself are really far away, and not due to your inability, but just due to, the basic wall that exists over here.
Yeah. I mean, you can come to that conclusion, but I am confident enough to make the claim that based on my moral system that Christianity, at least at this point where my work is currently at, Christianity has created a net negative with regards to physical, mental, and social health in human progress. But yeah, like I said, that could change. I'm still working this kind of like large model analysis of big questions like this. So yeah, I mean, yeah, that could change, and if I can share publicly what that work looks like, and people can critique it, and I'm sure a lot of the critiques are going to be valuable, and I can implement them into the system. But we are out of time unless anyone has anything really quick to say with regards to Jesus. Yeah, go ahead, Zemo.
Yeah, I've been patient. I got a few things. I'll try to make it quick as possible. Just cut me off if I ramble too much, but I'm going to try to keep it quick. When you're talking about Jesus, you obviously need to, if he's moral or not, you need to identify the character that you're judging. Either you believe or are judging, like y'all say, the Trinity version of Jesus, where he's actually the Alpha and the Omega. You know, that totally changes it compared to him being just a guy who thinks he's a Messiah and believes himself the Son of God. You know, and I judge him on that criteria, which is who I believe he was. I don't believe in a God, and I don't believe he was the Son of God. You know, so I judge him on that. And it's tricky because of his eschatology, because, you know, that was very common back then. And you had to judge him for his time, especially if you believe him to not be like a transcendent being. You have to judge him morally for his time, just like you would Confucius or the Buddha. Like, and like I said, for his time, he does seem to be a moral genius of some sorts. You know, turn the other cheek, things like this, helping lepers, hanging out with women who were unwed, maybe prostitutes, was radical for that time. I mean, it was in a very positive way. And to say what my like moral judgment is, it's very similar to yours, honestly. It's like along the lines of Sam Harris' moral landscape, but I'm a subjectivist. I'd call it, you know, objective, like subjectivity. Basically, I subjectively pick a metric or set of metrics like health, well-being, but I call it objective because at the end, I think all morality grounds into conscious states and judgment of conscious states and how they interact with other conscious states, how I make you feel, in other words, and through my actions.
Yeah, I'm really glad you laid that out, because it's a really important part of trying to fight for a high resolution in philosophical discourse on issues of morality, that we fight for these metrics rather than focusing on just pure critiques without offering where you're critiquing from. It's a really important piece of the pie that's missing if we don't do that.
Because then if you debate a guy like Andrew Wilson and he tries to back you in the corner with axioms, and this is the thing, I actually learned this in this Discord, is if somebody says, oh, so you have a subjective metric? I go, yeah, I do. You know, I have a subjective metric when I listen to the Beatles, and I will argue with you that the Beatles are a great musical group, like objectively. Like, you know what I mean?
And you know what? You know what, Zemo? When you say, yeah, I have my own subjective, what are those moral metric, epistemic metrics, but you know what else you can say? So do you, sir or ma'am, because you are a cognitive human being just like me. There's nothing special about, you know, this person sitting across for you, that they have access to this special brain or special mind that allows them to tap into some special zone that you can't tap into. Cognitive science has demonstrated that human beings are doing the same thing when it comes to this value making. We are using our feelings, why do Christians still hold on to Jesus and hold on to Christianity? Because they feel it is correct. That when they stop feeling it's correct, then they're going to potentially start losing their connection to that strong feeling they once had. So it's sentiments.
Well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sentiments and it's comforting.
Yeah, that's all part of sentiments. Yeah. Yeah.
They believe it. People can believe it but not be happy, even though they believe it and are following it, and that might cause them to question it. Or they might not believe it at all, even though it still makes them happy. It could go both ways. But real quick, just two things. One, the reason I call it objective subjectivism is I think, objectively, conscious states are irreducible. In other words, you can't create an objective equation or anything like that to describe yet.
Yeah.
Like the red room problem where a girl is in a room that's black and white and she has all the scientific everything to learn about the color red, but she never actually sees the color red, but she learns the wavelengths and blah, 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 blah. She will never experience that qualia. And because that is a state of conscious states, of conscious feelings of what we're all experiencing, that's an objective, like bedrock foundation. I mean, you can't get, below experience.
Although that's not the Humean gap, the Izot gap that is debated about in. So, but I do understand that there is a branch of moral realism, like you're describing. Everyone, we are out of time for today, unless you had something to say, Perry.
I just wanted to say, I think from my subjective lens, that the Beatles are overrated. They're still pretty good, but I'm going to save my. How old am I? 49.
Oh, okay. You're older than me.
I'm going to save my
49
answer.
in his bra.
I'm going to save my answer, tonight's answer, for tomorrow, because I think that it leads into it.
Okay.
So.
Thanks, Perry. Niv, you had something really quick, and then we really got to go.
Yeah. I was just saying, like, with the progress, it could also be despite of, not because of Christianity. And yes, you can say that there are good things as well. And I'm kind of like referring to you like how hard it would be to measure. And you could also learn from the negative, like the harm that was done.
Yeah, so, you can learn from all of that. Yeah.
You can get progress from that, but the harm could be way more worse. So it would make more sense to not have to go through wrongs, go through the harms that could be probably more damaging in a larger scale than any type of benefit you could get from learning from harms.
Well,
so
when
like you said when you're referring to it, it's very complicated to measure. Like if we be further or not, that could be the case. We could be in flying cars by now if it wasn't despite Christianity. That's why I'm asking why does he think that way, and where we are, it's more of a net. Is Christianity is more of a positive?
You and Big Yahoo can continue that conversation in the TAV, because it is TAV time. Yeah. Everyone on YouTube, whether you're seeing this later or now, come and join us on Discord. We have off-air voice chats happening like this all the time, where you can mingle, have even more lighthearted conversations. The Discord link is there for you. Please make sure you subscribe to the new Pangburn Live channel here. We have conversations like this happening all the time. Come into our Discord server, enjoy the community. Everyone in Discord, we're going to head down to the tavern now for anyone that wants to keep hanging out. I really appreciate everyone's input today. Tomorrow it's going to be, was Jesus wise? So please bring your, even if it's not completely well developed, but bring your ideas of what wisdom is, how you would judge the wisdom of Jesus, because that's what we will talk about tomorrow. Thanks everyone, and make sure you're out there maximizing well-being for your